welcome to everyone. Call the meeting to order just after 10:30. And the first item is approval of minutes. People have a chance to take a look at those that were circulated. Any questions or comments from anyone? No? Who wants to move adoption? David, seconder, Pat. Okay, thanks. Great. Okay, Chris? Review of the day's agenda. I guess I should just ask, do we have any conflicts of interest from anyone online or in person today? I think so. Okay, so noted, no conflicts. So over to you, Chris.
Okay, we have a. Just a recap, I guess, some past projects. So Nation Playground Pavilion. We've come up with consensus comments with the design team. And I think we're going to be coming back with a revised version of the design that addresses some of those. I think some of the key issues that got raised were accommodating crowds for dining and cafe areas and whether or not we can put the roof terrace to more use for that purpose. Thinking about the configuration and orientation of the educational room and the relationship to the outdoor area and the interior pavilion space. We've already had a good debrief with Jana and her team, and we've got a design workshop planned for July. Next slide, please. Just an update on York Street Park construction. So if you walked by, you'll see the liners going in almost all the way in for the pond, and the coping stones are now being installed, and then those are going to get covered in the red mosaic tile once the coping stones are in. And then there is a river stone that will cover the bottom of the pond. Fortunately, due to cost, we don't have it covering the whole bottom of the pond, but we're hoping we can find enough money to do that so that the whole surface is this kind of river rock rather than having to leave some of the liner exposed. But there's been a lot of budgetary pressures on this project. All the inflation and escalation hasn't helped. So it's a tight envelope we're trying to achieve a lot with. Next slide. I'll let you do this one, Leon.
Yeah. So looking at the next 2 months agenda for DRP, for July, we have Ontario Place. We're going to have 2 separate sessions. One for Infrastructure Ontario to provide like a for information session on their RFP for Ontario Place. And then they will have their design team to walk us through an issues ID presentation of what they're currently proposing. And this project will probably return at the end of the year for schematic design. For September, we have a full agenda. This is, of course, after our August break. Things might shift a little bit, but as of now, we're looking at 4 projects with 2 on the waiting list. So we have Legacy Art Project. This will come back for their final review of detailed design. Parliament Slip, returning for schematic design. Destination Playground, the overall playground itself, coming back for schematic design, and also another session for the pavilion and the winter garden, also returning for schematic design. On the waiting list, we have Reese Street Park. We saw this project, I think, 2 years ago for Issues ID. They might return in September for schematic design, and also Quayside Public Realm, issues identification for that one. So we'll see if those projects will make September. If not, we'll see them later that year.
Looks like a full September meeting anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
Should be busy.
Yeah. So it'll probably be the full day.
Yeah.
Plan on that. Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Leon? No, sure. Okay. Waterfront updates. Anything else, Chris, from you on this?
No, I don't really have anything
Overall?
else. I don't think.
No.
Do we?
No.
We continue to build the river. There's been a few little interruptions with some of the labor disputes and disruptions, but so we've lost a few weeks, but I think we're still tracking at least pretty close to our time frame of having this done by end of 2024, may push into beginning of 2025, but we're not drastically off our schedule, maybe a little bit. And again, we're having some upward cost pressure thanks to all the factors going on out there, and that's my project's also getting squeezed a bit. So again, optimistic that we're going to be able to pull it all off without any major problems. But I'll let you know if anything else happens. We've reported to our board that we're on budget still, but we have 2 years to go. So looking ahead, we're concerned that things could keep trending up. We may have some issues. So.
And I don't know if it's already happened or not. You and George, I believe, are going to take the Lieutenant Governor on a tour of the waterfront.
Yeah, so that was supposed to happen this afternoon, but
Oh.
because there's a swearing in of the new government, she has had to.
Well, that's not much.
She's decided to
Basin.
postpone because I think she's doing that later this week.
Oh
So
my goodness.
she's getting ready for that. So that's going to get
That's
rescheduled
good.
for July. Yeah.
And how did that come about, just for information? She just expressed her interest?
Yeah, she was at an event. Actually, it was a dedication event for the Indigenous art piece at Billy Bishop Airport. If you've been out there, they did a canoe with some symbolic animals in it. It's quite an amazing piece. It's a huge piece of granite. And there was a kind of unveiling. She was there, and George and I chatted with her and offered her a tour of the Portlands. She knew about the project, but she didn't know a ton about it, and she was very interested. So
That's a
Yeah.
good sign.
Yeah.
You may even have some new ministers might want to accompany her. Who
Yeah,
knows?
maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe.
we'll find out on Friday, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Reported back at last month's projects. We are always ahead of schedule, it seems.
Yeah,
here, so-
we're just so efficient today.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I can remind members of the public who have joined is, this session, of course, is public and will be recorded and posted on the Waterfront Toronto website for anyone who wishes to see it. Welcome again. So this is 1 to 7 Yonge Street, phases 4 and 5, detailed design. So Leon, I think you're doing an introduction.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Leon Lai. I am the Design Review Panel Manager with Waterfront Toronto. And I will be making this introduction today with Shauna Kerr, who's also on the phone. Shauna is the Senior Community Planner with City of Toronto. Also on the phone, we have Sature Fade, Senior Urban Designer with City. Like Paul mentioned, the project is here for detailed design review. 1 to 7 Yonge phase 4 and 5. So we're looking at the, get rid of that. Okay, there. So the proponent is Pinnacle. The lead architect is Ari Pontorini Architects. Landscape architect is NAC Design, with WSP as the sustainability lead. The site is located at the intersection of Yonge Street, Queens Quay East. Today our focus is the pink area, parcel B, which contains phases 4 and 5 of the development. At the corner of Yonge Street and Queens Quay East is the Toronto Star building, which you can see here in this aerial image. West of the site are the residences of the World Trade Center condo complex. East of Freeland Street is the project site of 55 Lakeshore Boulevard East. And now I would like to introduce Shauna Kerr to give us the project background.
Thank you very much, Leon. So 1 to 7 Yonge Street is a phased development consisting of 3 towers on the north block in various stages of approval and 2 towers on the south block. The 2 blocks, the north and south blocks, are separated by a new east-west public street, an extension of the Harbor Street. Site one has, or phase one on the north block has site plan approval and the tower construction is in progress. Phase two, the lifting of the holding provision in the zoning bylaw has been completed. A notice of approval has been issued and below grade works are in progress. There has been an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application submitted for additional height and density on this phase. Phase three still requires a lifting of the holding provision, and there is a site plan application under review. Phases 4 and 5 on the south block, there is an approval for the former scheme that was achieved by way of an Ontario Lands Tribunal settlement and a 2019 order. And there is a request or an application submitted to the city under review to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment to support the development of a hotel use on the site and additional built form changes. And as I mentioned, that application is under review. There's also a site plan application for this these two phases that has been submitted to the city and is under review. Phases 1 and 3 have residential uses, including affordable housing, a hotel, and a community center, which is located at the corner in the phase 1 development. And phases 4 and 5 have office and retail, and the proposal of adding the hotel as a land use. The OLT order that was issued in April of 2019 reflects a settlement between the City of Toronto and the applicant, and that resulted in specific official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment. These provisions include a permission for heights of 22 stories and 35 stories. There is a total of 147,600 square meters of GFA approved. Privately owned, publicly accessible space through the mid-block connection. And there was, as part of that agreement, a below-grade path connection beneath Harbor Street connecting the north and south blocks.
Thanks, Shauna. A little bit more on the site context. So this is a street view standing on Queens Quay at Yonge Street, looking northeast. You can see the Toronto Star building in the foreground. Also standing on Queens Quay at Freeland Street, looking northwest. Standing on Freeland Street, looking southwest. And finally on Yonge Street, looking southwest. So we can see the water on the far right. In terms of development context, to the east, we have 55 Lakeshore Boulevard East, development by Menkes, designed by Architects Alliance. On the right here, you see the precinct ground floor plan with the 3 blocks. Block 1, so starting sort of moving counterclockwise from the bottom right corner. Block 1 is office and commercial. Block 2 is residential and commercial. Block 3 is residential commercial, and it also has daycare and a school facility in the upper floor of the podium. Block 4 is the Lower Yonge Park with contributions by all 3 nearby developments. Specifically looking at block 3 here, this has the heritage listed LCBO office building, office and warehouse, which has now been integrated as part of the podium for the new residential development. And given this is a prominent site, we would like to give a quick recap of the Lower Yonge precinct plan. The precinct plan in 2016 covers 9 hectares of commercial land bounded on the east side by Lower Jarvis, Yonge Street on the west side, Lakeshore on the north, and Queens Quay on the south. The plan illustrates a series of fine-grained mid-block connections to encourage connecting people through the building sites and permeability, and it strives to encourage walking and discourage the use of automobile. The precinct plan also calls for the public ground plan to be generous and well-designed with an appropriate mix of uses for workers and residences. There are 4 street types in this area. Queens Quay East is identified as a primary street. Harbor Street in red is the primary street loco. Some of the north-south streets, including Yonge Street, Cooper in the middle, are promenade streets. Freeland and the new streets, are both in orange here, are identified as neighborhood streets. The proposed streetscape plan, as part of the precinct plan, proposes pavement patterns and designs for the various street types, including details and specific dimensions. And the emphasis is that these details will help create a coherent sense of identity and provide consistency through the central waterfront. The public art plan, as part of the precinct plan, outlines a series of art opportunities and how they function with the public realm, identifying both exterior and building interior locations, such as atriums of buildings, but also pops. They encourage movement from one site to another and try to reduce perceived boundaries between private and public sites. We would like to point out that this site is adjacent to Queens Quay East, the public realm project managed by Waterfront Toronto. We have retained West 8 and DTA to develop the design for 2A, which is the area immediately next to the project site today. And you can see that on this map here in light blue. We support granite pavers to be extended right to the building face. Also adjacent to 1 Yonge is the Lakeshore Public Realm project on the north side, also known as the Gardiner Public Realm. The project site specifically for 1 Yonge is identified as a key private development frontage. And the public realm provides a coherent design vision and identity to improve pedestrian and cycling connection along the entire boulevard. This project has had multiple appearances at the DRP. Recently, we saw the corner open space coming to our panel in March 2020 for schematic design. And later that year, we saw phase 4 and 5 return for schematic design. And today is the final stage of the DRP process, detailed design. Quick recap from the last review for phase 4 and 5. Just highlighting some of the key comments from the panel. The foot of Yonge Street is very important and prominent location. Consider the design very carefully as it is a 100-year decision for the site. There was strong non-support for the above-grade pedestrian bridge over Harbor Street. The project shall support the evolution of Queens Quay as a main street moving eastward, ensure the ground level design, retail design along Queens Quay is designed to support a main street experience. The pedestrian links need to embody a special quality for this unique site. It's to be inviting, powerful, and clear. Consider redesigning the ground floor mid-block connections. Ensure the public realm is exposed to daylight. It's important for the pedestrian spines to be consistent in width to ensure strong linkages and also provide clear separation between pedestrian and vehicular areas. On the building, the panel supported the removal of the existing Star building lobby stairs and opening up of the ground floor. Ensure glass areas are maximized to animate the corner. The building facades appear generic. Consider more development and explore other opportunities to create an interesting ensemble of building envelopes. Consider alternative strategies in the facade and materiality to mark the original Star building. The hotel drop-off feels uninviting. Consider more open, naturally lit loading area that does not interfere with the pedestrian links. For public art and landscape, it is important to recognize Yonge Street and the corner of Queens Quay with public art. In terms of sustainability, provide more information on TEDI, GHGI, heating sources to demonstrate how the project plans to achieve TGS Tier 2. and also consider the impact of the carbon tax in the future and develop strategies to further reduce carbon demand. For today, we would like the panel to consider the following areas. The updated public realm and pedestrian experience within the blocks, the updated hotel massing in relation to the Toronto Star Building, overall design quality and experience of the north-south pedestrian connection in terms of openness, materiality, lighting, and coordination with the northern half of the site, architectural quality of the retail units fronting the north-south pedestrian spine, and also the public streets. And in terms of the buildings, sustainability objectives and strategies, recladding of the Toronto Star Building, relationship of the Star with the podium volumes, the ensemble of tower facades, and also in relation to phase 1 to 3 that are already under construction, and the ground floor facade details. And lastly, the colored finishes of the proposed material palettes. And now I would like to introduce David Pontarini, partner of Ari Pontarini Architects, to walk us through the design presentation.
Thanks, Leon. Can you see that as a full screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. Let me turn my camera on here as well. So we started with just the slide illustrating the site within the kind of the existing or the pre-existing context in a way, because this does not show a lot of the development that has happened, but I think it's clearly defined that it's 4 and 5, phases 4 and 5, the existing Star tower and the existing printing building. The printing building will be removed, as Leon said. The Star building will remain in its entirety, and it will be reclad, mechanical systems upgraded, and integrated through the kind of material palette that you'll see developing into the overall development, and the base will be reconfigured. For some reason, it's not clicking forward. Okay, here we go. It certainly, you know, when you look at what's emerging around us to the east and west of us, it's sitting and positioned within a very much changing skyline that's happening to the east of us, highlighting a few of the developments here in this massing model. 3D view just showing what's proposed, what's under construction, and what's existing. Our building is the light tan building on the left-hand side of the image, just north of Pier 27, just to understand the relationship within this kind of emerging context and the way the scale steps down towards the Central Park for the Lower Yonge precinct and then transitions back up in both directions, to the north, to the west of us, and to the east of us. Parcel B, again, is the focus. A few images of the Toronto Star Building, close-up images of things that we are working on. For example, removing the stair at the base of the office building, providing a contiguous sidewalk that goes from the curb line right up to the edge of the existing lobby building. So you won't have this kind of grade change condition existing with the stairs going up. And then removal of the printing building, but keeping the Star building and recladding over top of the existing grid and over top of the existing precast, so that really that existing massing that's represented by the precast grid remains, but is covered in a new cladding that ties it into the overall design and material palette. The previous zoning map and the proposed zoning map, the key thing to point out here is that we're no longer building over top of the Star building itself. We've actually pulled the mass back. So here on the right-hand side, you'll see it in the 3D views. The Star building will exist as its own piece, and that massing has really been pulled off of the top, and it will now exist as a part of the tower that is positioned just to the north of the Star building. And then all of the other heights and all of the other dimensions that were in the previous zoning map are the same. We have not increased the heights or changed the number of floors. We're really kind of working within that. A few images that just show the north parcel construction status and the material palette that has started to emerge there. And there are things that we're drawing from this palette, the fritted glass, on the balconies now becomes fritted glass as part of the curtain wall system. The idea of the kind of soft eased edges of the building that you can see in the base of the community center with the round or the curved corners. The white metal panel, the hybrid of curtain wall and metal panel is really the basis for what we're proposing moving forward. This image is really just showing this idea of that transition from the as-of-right zoning, what we had proposed previously as a kind of a top-down axo view, the previous massing that had a kind of a rectangular building that straddled the top of the star. And now you can see the proposed revised massing where we've pulled that back and we now just have a single tower piece that sits adjacent to the star north of it and rises up. The phasing diagrams, which have not really changed and have been described, phase 1 is under construction, nearing completion. Phase 2 is also under construction at grade. Phase 3, we're in the working drawing stages, and phase 4 and 5 similarly are advancing forward. The grade level pedestrian connection showing the current condition, what's being constructed. The rendering on the left top is the proposed view looking from the south end looking north. And then the plan on the right is just showing the that network of north-south connectors and east-west minor walkways and connections as well. But the primary connectors that maintain continuity and scale are the north-south connectors along the street edge and in the middle of the block. A rendered view, which was not in your package, I apologize for that, but this is a rendered view of that mid-block connection looking from the north. You've just kind of come in from Harbor Street, you're walking south. You've got a clear shot and a view right down to the water. The parking lot is across the street. I'm not sure what the future development is planned for that, but there is that kind of clear shot. You see the Pier 8 building or Pier 27 building on the side here in the upper portion, so it's off to the side, but there is the ability to have this clear view that is part of this mid-block north-south connector, and just showing some of the connections into the office lobby, into the hotel lobby, into some of the retail that comes from Queens Quay up into this space, and then the drop-off area that I'll talk a bit about. And then just a comparison side by side of the phase 1 or north parcel mid-block connection with the south parcel mid-block connection, giving you a sense of the continuity of scale of the width and of the height of these spaces. The big difference here is that the phase or the north parcel has glazing on it. The south parcel, we've decided to leave it open air so that as you're making this transition down, you're kind of starting to kind of get into more of a real kind of open space, open air quality public realm in the middle of the block as you travel through it. A consolidated landscape plan that shows the connection to all of the landscape strategies around us. And I think Leon's described a bit of how that works and how we're maintaining and we are consistent with the proposed kinds of landscape concepts that are emerging on the various streets around us. A close-up view of the ground floor that just starts to illustrate that very loosely in terms of, you know, the color palette, the red granite along Queens Quay and some of the other palettes that we're developing along Harbor, Yonge Street, and Freeland Street. The mid-block connection, the drop-off area, and I'll talk a bit about that in a moment, how vehicles circulate, but just, again, just giving you a sense of how permeable this ground floor is and how the uses are integrated. Retail does have three-sided exposure as it comes in from the north. It also has exposure as it comes in from the south along the east side of the walkway. On the west side, we have the office lobby, the hotel lobby, and the Toronto Star lobby that we've got to integrate with some of the grade changes and ramps and stairs that we do have to make a connection up to that elevated slab because we can't change that. And then just also illustrating how the retail wraps and positions itself along Queens Quay Harbor, and how we've got the commercial office entrances in light blue along Freeland, Harbor, and Yonge Street. The path connections, as have been described, do not have an extension going across Harbor Street. So we have the connection that's being discussed to the north of us, to the west of us, sorry, to the east of us in the north parcel. And then as we come down, you would go down a set of stairs and elevators down to the P2 level, I believe it is, and then across and then back up into the south parcel. Or ultimately, you would just kind of come across, drop down to grade, and walk across the street at the intersection, and then come into the system. So that is a change that we've moved forward with. A second floor consolidated plan, again, just showing the landscape and the fact that we don't have the mid-block elevated path connection coming across Harbor Street. But really here, we're just illustrating the relationship of some of the commercial program spaces, the office space, some of the food hall spaces and retail spaces that will front Freeland, Harbor, and Queens Quay. A series of sections that I think are consistent with the emerging landscape plans around us, so that there is continuity across the site, and we can speak to these more in detail if you have questions of them later. But there are the 4 sections that we provided: Freeland, Queens Quay, Harbor Street, and Yonge Street as well, just showing the scale and the different details of the assemblies proposed. A comparison of the ground floor, just showing the previous pedestrian site circulation pathways that we had. And then on the right, the revised pathway that shows we've increased the width so that the north and south pathways or passages, mid-block connections align now in scale and width. The drop-off and parking in the south parcel is now consistent with what we did in the north parcel, in the sense that there's a curb cut that brings you into a hotel residential drop-off area that's separate from the pedestrian. We've done the same thing in the south parcel now. And the same way we had a single ramp for loading and parking access off of Freeland, we have the same configuration now in the south parcel, just to kind of show the consistency of that approach. And then the mid-block east-west connection comes in across or adjacent to the incoming driveway, and it goes through towards the west out to Yonge Street, just north of the Toronto Star parcel. A close-up of the ground floor, showing the widths and providing some of the dimensions of the sidewalks, the setbacks, and the enhancements that are being proposed. The sections showing the stacking and blocking of the program with the retail at the base, the office, and then the hotel program above. And the section on the right is just showing this idea that the Toronto Star building exists as a kind of a massing separate entity, and that our north office and hotel building pull away from that and sit adjacent to it. And then a top-down AXO view of the revised massing, showing the existing Star building in white. The blue is the new building form, the way it steps down and continues to terrace down on the east side of the site. And then the building open, that is open to the sky above the mid-block connection that runs right from the top end to the south end, and how that exists within the second floor plan around the hotel ballroom functions, and will provide light and access and views into this space as well. And just some very typical office floor plans, the hotel floor plan up above, how that steps back, a few 3D massing views that now kind of clearly show the revised massing pulling back from the Star building, how we've changed the stepping and the terracing on the east building, and the expression of the facade, where the white panel cladding that we're using on the office building, the existing Star building, transitions into a white fritted pattern in the adjacent glass buildings, and how we're articulating that, and how some of the work that we've done on other office buildings and cladding systems in the city are being kind of brought to bear on this project as well. Projects like 7 St. Thomas, King Portland, and 19 Duncan. They're all buildings that are exploring this idea of the kind of the fritted patterns and glazing, eased corners, round, soft edges, and bringing that in, along with combining the metal panel, the white painted metal panel from phase 1, and how that all kind of creates a vocabulary that we think ties the north parcel together in a better way with the south parcel, and just kind of creates even though we still have that stepped massing, it creates a clearer hierarchy of, the narrower, the shorter office blocks have the fritted pattern on it. The larger office forms have the regular glazing patterns on it, and they all relate in a way to the grid of the office building and how that all ties together. That we hope to kind of create something that signifies that these two sites are connected and related. A few views of Yonge Street and how the base of phase 1 and 2 are now connecting into the base of the office building, and how that idea of the metal panel in the base of phase 1 and 2 becomes the base of the phases 4 and 5, but transitions into the frit, but then transitions into a gridded white metal panel over the Star Building. A few comparisons of before and after current proposal versus previous proposal. Definitely the massing and the expression on the east side of the site, phase 4, is quite different from what was originally proposed. It's been kind of cleaned up and calmed down a bit. Some of the facade comparisons, the idea of that metal panel forming the canopies as well at the base of the current proposal, and how we've just tied, again, hopefully tied in terms of the color palette, the white frit, the white metal panel, and then the rest of the curtain wall into something that has a better relationship between the building elements. And then a series of sections that show you how that landscaping setup that's been proposed, the tree patterns, relates to the building edges, the canopies, how we're stepping back on the left-hand side from Yonge Street and opening up the base of the existing office building, at least providing some covered passage underneath that walkway. There is a grade change issue there that we're still dealing with. And then as we go all the way around the building, just showing the kind of canopy conditions at an upper level and at a lower level. A detail of this fritted glass pattern that we're proposing at the base of the building, and some of the other elements, and how that relates to the 2D drawings get transferred into the 3D renderings, which I think are a more realistic representation of what this cladding will look like, and how all of this then relates to built projects that we've done, and how you get a better sense looking at these photographs of how this material palette will come together. And then we've just provided a series of detailed 2D visual elevations with the related rendered views so that you can get a sense of that materiality. A few views at the street level that show the base condition, the food and beverage, the ability to spill out onto terraces along the streets, how that gets detailed, some of the signage. This is the north-south connector between the buildings, looking north from Queens Quay, and then a street view at the north end of the site looking down Yonge Street, and then one looking up Yonge Street at the corner of the Toronto Star Building, showing that transformation from the gray precast to the white gridded metal panel. And I'll pass it to Johi to go through the sustainability.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Juhi Oh. I am a sustainability advisor at WSP, and I'm happy to share an update on the sustainability vision for phase 4 and 5. Previous phases, including phase 1, 2, and 3, targeted TGS under version 2. For phase 4 and 5, the project is targeting TGS tier 2 under version 3, and it is also aiming to achieve LEED Platinum certification. Next. As part of the Tier 2 strategy, various requirements will be implemented, including providing EV infrastructure for 20% of the parking spaces and remaining parking to be fully EV ready. Bird-friendly glazing strategies are also being incorporated, and I will go over in more detail shortly on the embodied carbon, water use reduction, and the stormwater strategies as well. Next. First, on the building energy performance, previous phases 1, 2, and 3 are planned to be connected to the Enwave district energy system. Currently, the team is in discussion with Enwave for phase 4 and 5. Currently, assuming a connection with Enwave, the building design is focusing on reducing heating demand, as performance will initially be dependent on Enwave performance. So with the DES connection, it will result in no on-site fossil fuel combustion. We have incorporated an excellent cooling efficiency, which is paired with a good heating efficiency of 89% currently. The focus is on long-term future-proofing, as retrofits of the building will not be required to further reduce carbon demands, as future carbon performance will improve as N-Wave decarbonizes as well. Next. We are currently targeting TDS version 3 Tier 2 and LEED v for platinum equivalent energy performance. Here are the sort of the targets around the TUI, TADI, and GHGI that we are aiming for. Planned measures include improved air tightness, insulated walls, and on an average of window wall to ratio that is less than 7%. This is paired with the demand control ventilation to minimize the outdoor air as well. Next. For embodied carbon, the structure of the existing Toronto Star building is to be retained to reduce embodied carbon impacts, but we are also looking at the LEED credit for the whole building life cycle assessment for the new phases as well to look at opportunities to further have an impact on the embodied carbon. Next. As previously mentioned, LEED climate strategy is currently under review. The building is designed and will be constructed to achieve the certification. Next. And finally, for the ecological strategy, beyond TDS Tier 2 requirements, we are looking for the collected rainwater to be used for 100% of the irrigation demand. Landscaping will be using native and drought-tolerant plant species. Also, phase 2 and 3 incorporated greywater reuse for the toilet flushing in the hotel and the affordable housing portion of the development. So we're looking at a similar strategy for phase 4 and 5 for the hotel and the commercial area as well. And I believe that's the last slide.
Okay, thank you very much. David, do you have any other comments you want to make?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I'll turn to questions from the panel to start. So we'll go back and forth between the in-person members and those online. So how about Janet, you wanna start?
Thanks, Dave. I have just one question. If you could go to the pedestrian plan slide. I think there was another one that showed all of the linkages, but what I'd like to hear more about is what in the pedestrian realm is covered, what's open air, and in the ones that are open air, are there glass walls and doors that and bookend the north, south, and east, west pedestrian links?
Yeah, the only pedestrian link that is enclosed, and Jody, correct me if I'm wrong, but is this one that goes through the hotel lobby building and the residential tower at this point here. All of the rest of the connections are exterior. This pathway, this main north-south pathway is covered with glass. This east-west pathway is underneath the building soffit, so it is covered, but has a clear opening at all the ends here. Once you cross the street, this is again open, all open to the exterior, and there's a portion that's covered by a building that covers the straddles this portion, but the balance that I was showing is all open to above with no glass. This east-west connector is under the building soffit, so it is covered, but exterior. And this is also an exterior connector, I believe.
That's right.
Thanks.
Any other questions? No? Okay, Pat?
I don't have any questions, thanks.
No? Okay. Eric?
Just one question regarding the retail and trade. Could you just maybe elaborate on how the retail units are being serviced in terms of, because I don't see any service corridor or how they would be serviced, and how do you anticipate back of house function? Because a lot of them are three-sided, double-sided, and how it may actually work.
Well, I think that given that we're trying to achieve this kind of double-sided frontage, the servicing would once the demising walls get nailed down, because they really aren't at this point, then we would figure out, and depending on the type of usage, if we need to provide independent elevators for some of these, if we need to kind of have major connection points, but without a clear understanding of how the retail program is being set up in terms of is it service retail, is it F&B, food and beverage. That's all stuff that we'll have to continue to kind of work through and make sure that we can accommodate it either as a back of house function or as something that has scheduled deliveries during the days, like a lot of retail in the city does. And this client, Pinnacle, has extensive retail uses throughout their development, so we're quite used to working with them on finalizing that.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'll go to our online guests. Gina, do you have any questions?
Hi, yeah, great presentation and really clear on so many fronts. The one place I don't think I heard much, or maybe I missed it, was just the roofscape. What's happening there? What does that look like? I think would love just some more clarity on that.
Yeah, I think, Jody, I don't know if you can comment on the green roofs and hotel amenity program, which we haven't nailed down yet, though.
Yeah, most of I think we have the one view that shows the green roofs, David. Most of the development does have green roof on it. On the top of the hotel, there is a pool shown. That would be amenity for the hotel, but otherwise it's all green roof there. So it's not shown in that rendering, but I think the taller, on top of the tall building, there is a hotel pool there where we are planning on putting a pool up there. I thought
And
we
then
had one view of that.
Are the green roofs occupiable?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Gina. Fatty?
Just a quick question. Is there a mid-block pedestrian crossing planned on Harbor Street between the north and south blocks? Because it seems to me like there would be a very easy continuous walk all the way from Lakeshore down to Queens Quay. And then there's a kind of threshold in which there might be a crossing that might need to be planned. I don't know if this is a question for the city, but I'm just wondering if there's some pedestrian crossing plan for that spot.
You're talking about right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or are people expected to go to the end of the block if they don't want to jaywalk and cross at the light and come back to the other side?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a conversation with city.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. David?
Hi, and thanks for your presentation. That was very clear. And David, you'll have to, and others, you have to excuse me. This is the first time I've seen this project as a new panel member, so some of these questions may be a little naive, but I have three quick ones. One is a follow-up to Gina's question. Are the green roofs extensive or intensive?
Sarah, can you answer that one?
I think they're extensive for now, according to our calculation and what we have right now.
Okay, thanks for that.
No problem.
Another, and then two pedestrian level or at grade questions. One is what is driving the number of bicycle parking spaces on Yonge Street? I'm noticing it's a kind of dominant streetscape element on Yonge. Is that a city requirement of some kind, or is that just a kind of desire? What's the rationale behind that?
I can try and answer that. Like, we were trying to meet our bike count and also keep the pedestrian pathways clear. So, Sarah, do you want to comment on your placement there, or?
Sorry, which area we're talking about?
On the Yonge Street Boulevard, where we placed all the bikes.
So what's the question again? Sorry.
The question is what's the rationale for most of the bike parking at grade being down that Yonge Street edge? Or is there?
Well, we have some on the other side too, on Freeland as well. And we have some on Harbor as well. The only side, oh, we also have some on the south side. So we have bike racks on all 4 sides of the block.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. And then just another question. I'm noticing that on the previous kind of public realm documents, Freeland was a kind of tree-lined street, adjacent to the parks. There was a kind of connection between this block and the adjacent park block. Now there are 2 street trees, and I just wonder what the rationale is for the removal of all the others, presumably.
I think there's a bus pad. That's why we had to. So the only other area we could add trees was in the center where we have that blue hatch on the building. And so in that area, there's a large bus pad that we can't add any trees. And the only other 2 areas were the areas on the sides, which we already have 2 trees on each side.
Great,
So
thanks.
David, I guess it's, it's this conflict between bus, car, truck servicing. Freeland became the service street for both the north and the south parcel, right? Because we're trying to activate Yonge Harbor, Lakeshore, Queens Quay, and it became the service street. So in both parcels.
Great. All right, thanks.
Okay, David?
Yep. Good.
Yeah. Okay, Emily, are you there?
I am. Thank you.
Great. Have any questions?
Yeah, and I apologize. I had to join a little late, so I did not see the entire presentation. I do have another follow-up question about the connection with Freeland Street. And I understand that there's a lot of infrastructure demands in this area, but can you talk to the base of the building and the zone that would be, I guess, the commercial or retail zone? Are there plans for those areas to be able to be planted and have an edge of landscape at the base of the building as well? Or what's the rationale about the bringing pavement all the way up to the base of the building?
Well, so most of those edges, like the building footprint at the edges, is the retail entrance. So we can't really add any planting. And the other issue is that there are overhangs and canopies on top, so you can't really put any planting in those areas. And then the other issue was that we were trying to comply on the public boulevard, and we were trying to comply with the Lower Yonge precinct plan in order to add, like, where the trees are and what are the distances between them, or like what is the all the other streetscaping, the other areas. But in terms of the areas next to the building, there's an overhang that we can't add any landscaping, and there's building entrances, and most likely there's going to be glazing. So you don't want to see planters next to the glazing, I guess. It's just a cleaner, landscaping treatment.
Okay, Emily?
That's it.
Yep, okay. Jeff, I think you're calling in. Are you there?
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Just one question on the greenhouse gas intensity. Do you guys have a number for that? I mean, you mentioned your targets under TGS, but have you done a GHG analysis?
Yeah, we are doing that right now, so I can fill it in. Currently, we're actually going more target first and then design option. So instead of looking at the design and tweaking the targets, like we basically we're working with the mechanical design system to see what's possible. So right now, as you know, we already have a heating and cooling plant where we must use the hydraulic loops. So we're looking at options how we can implement this and sort of tweaking the design to get to the target. But currently, like I don't like again, we're sort of in the process of updating it, and we're close to the tier 2.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Kevin.
Thank you. I was just reviewing the targets you put in your presentation. Those aren't TGS targets, those are targets for the project. Is that correct? Because I guess
yes, that is correct.
I'll frame my question because you're targeting meeting tier 2, which is great on the greenhouse gas intensity. Well, that's probably the most important metric to push down. But your total energy use intensity is less than tier 2, which is great. But your TEDI, your thermal demand, is quite a bit less than the requirement. Can you explain to me how you plan on reducing the thermal demand?
It's a little bit of mix of, as you know, like they all have a bit of a cascading impact because right now we are trying to work with the N wave system. So it's sort of, we're looking at the energy use target, which is a bit more aggressive, making sure that we get the GHGI target and then working with the envelope as well to get to the TEDI. So they're kind of fluctuating with each other, but again, that's why we're sort of going with a target first approach, trying to see what we can get there.
Well, I'm
Does
very
that answer
happy.
your question? Yeah.
Sort of. I'm impressed with a 30 TEDI. Is a very excellent TEDI for a commercial office building. So I'm saying this very, very respectfully. I don't see, I see a very high ratio of glass for the majority of that. So I'm curious as to how you're reducing that thermal demand. So.
Okay. Yeah, I can comment on that. So again, that's why like it's a bit of work with everyone. Like the building facade team is on this as well. And again, that's why we're going to target first. It may look like a very highly glazed project, but our team has the experience, like we worked on Water Park Place. For example, Water Park Place, I don't know if you're aware that actually building has a window wall to ratio of 46%. So we can work with the panel and the glazing system to reduce that glazing demand. And again, that's why we're trying to look at how do we maintain that architectural gesture while having the facade be able to perform the way it is. Again, based on our other commercial A towers, we all know when you go to triple glazing system, there's a lot of energy that's being lost. Again, that's sort of a continuous tweaking that we're currently trying to target. We're not there yet. Again, so that's something we are continuing to work on.
Okay, well, I hope you achieve that, Teddy. That would be great. Just a couple other questions, please. I applaud the project in maintaining the Toronto Star building purely on an embodied carbon, from an embodied carbon perspective. You mentioned that you're recladding the existing enclosure system. Are you including additional insulation in that overclad?
Jody, I don't know if you can answer that, but I don't believe we are at this point, but we may.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure.
Okay. Further to the embodied carbon discussion, which is hugely important. So we're maintaining the structure and the enclosure system primarily for the Star building. That's great. The remainder of the project, I'm assuming, is a concrete frame.
Yes.
And are we investigating low carbon concrete for that?
I don't think we've explored that yet. We just haven't gone into that detail.
Last question. You have a hotel as part of the project. What's the strategy for the domestic hot water? Are you tying that into the domestic, the district energy system, or will that be a standalone system?
Actually, I'm not sure on that. Sorry, I think just because we have so many options, I can't really confirm at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. David, I got one question to follow up when you were here last. And it relates to, the address, 1 Yonge Street, foot of Yonge Street, the symbolism, the start of Yonge Street. I thought there was going to be some sort of recognition or expression of that, perhaps in public art. And I didn't see that. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, yeah. I think, Paul, we haven't gotten into the public art component of this yet, and I think it is something that we need to advance to recognize the character, the location at the foot of Yonge Street. So that's definitely on our radar, but not something that we've dealt with or addressed yet.
But just to be clear, it's something that you intend to actually do and to recognize that symbolism.
I believe we're committed to the public art program, so yes.
All right, well, I'll look for that all the way through. I think I sent you my article when I drove every inch of Yonge Street. It's pretty powerful. This is where it starts, so it's important. Okay, I think those are all the questions. Unless anybody else, Eric?
I have one more question. Yes,
Yes.
it's just the you used to have on the previous scheme an overhead bridge, and thank you for eliminating it. I'm just curious, is there between the north and the south of Harbor Street, is there a tunnel or is there like an underground connection that is being planned? And if so, where and how does it function? Is that something that
we do have that, Eric, and it is almost directly underneath where the pathway is, right? So there is we're in discussions with the city, and we've kind of shown that as a pedestrian and a car connection that does travel underneath that part of Harbor Street.
and how would you then in terms, so I'm assuming it's still in development, but I would assume there would be a way to continuously come from the north to the south. Maybe there's a series of stair or escalator, and then is that how you see it happening?
Yeah, I'm sorry, the plan's a bit small, but where my cursor is, that's part of a vertical transportation stair elevator that would take you down to the P2 level. Then you would walk across, and we've got a stair we're kind of blocking in here that would bring you back up. So, it's a very kind of utilitarian below grade connection.
Okay, and where would it pop up down on the south side?
Right. You see where my cursor is right here? It's between the hotel lobby and the office lobby. It would be somewhere at this point right here.
Okay.
Possibly with a connection, definitely with a connection to the exterior, either out to Harbor Street or out to the mid-block connection. I suspect it'll be more to Harbor Street.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so let's move to comments from the panel. We'll just go around again. Janet?
Thanks. And thanks, Dave. I think there's been a lot of really great design tweaks since the last time we saw it. And I particularly like the way that the retail now is wrapping around into the pedestrian realm and the north-south streets. The thing I wanted to just make a comment on is that what seems to me to be a kind of missing scale in the project in the pedestrian realm. And you can see it most clearly in the plan that was on the screen a minute ago of the block in the pedestrian realm, and also the building sections at grade. And there's a lot of attention to, for instance, the canopies at 2 tiers. And yet the tier that's most impactful for the public, which is at the scale of a person, is unacknowledged from a design perspective. And I'd say that actually infiltrates everything in the pedestrian realm from what I can tell, including the kind of height, width aspect ratios of all the openings from the street into the mid-block connections. They seem to be all at the scale of a truck or cars going both ways in and out of the block, not at the scale of a person or 2 people or 3 people even in terms of the width. It's hard to tell about the articulation of those openings in terms of is there a differentiation in the material or materiality at the pedestrian realm. And I think if there were sections through there, I think we would find a similar spatialization vertically in all the pedestrian realms. There would be the open air and then there would be the covered. And they're driven more by building constraints than they are about an experience of the public realm. So I would really encourage you to introduce another scale, both in terms of the building envelope and how you walk along and seek cover from rain and wind and sun at the scale that's satisfying for a pedestrian, and also the permeable ways in which you move from the street into the north, south, and east, west connections, and make it satisfying and a really tactile experience for pedestrians. And I think that is amplified by the fact that there's no landscape realm in the interior block. To me, that's a really missed opportunity and a necessity for the experience of the pedestrian in that realm. There's a lot of good talent on the team. I don't think there's any reason why there cannot be a landscape realm on the interior, and it should come from the exterior and move in and be a way that you're guided into the mid-block condition. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks, Janet. Pat?
Yeah, thanks. Very clear presentation. I guess my own two comments. The not having the glazing, but maintaining the structure on the pedestrian passage on this block, right? So no glazing, but framing. Looks to me like it looks almost like it's been kind of value engineered. The glazing has just been left up because the framing is actually the framing is even less interesting than the north block. So and then I'm kind of debating amongst myself, like, is it good not to have glass there? Should we have glass? You know, what does it make sense? I guess what I'm left with I think it should just be a little bit more deliberate. Maybe there needs to be more members. Maybe there needs to be, you know, some shaping of it. I just reminded myself not that I'm suggesting Calatrava, but reminding myself about the Calatrava Galleria, or even the Galleria in Milan. I don't know if there's some way of kind of thinking that so it seems a little bit more deliberate rather than just, you know, some kind of lonely framing members. And then the further to Paul's comment about public art, and I think it's really true. Whenever we're tasked to it, we're always, if it's really a public, that there really is going to be public art, you have to be thinking about what is the public art site right from the beginning, right? So it's something that if the team is serious about, there needs to be some consideration as to where that is going to work. Is it going to be integrated into the building? Where would it go? I don't really see a logical site for it right now. So it's just a cautionary, might be good idea to think about it in advance. Anyway, thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'll go back to our guests. Fadi? There, Fadi?
Yep, I'm here. Yeah, thank you so much for a super clear presentation. I also really appreciate the refinements to the massing and glazing. I personally appreciate seeing the articulation of the original Toronto Star building's fenestration and massing sort of remain in place. I leave it to my colleagues to comment more about the specific material. In terms of the overall landscape open space diagram, you know, again, as mentioned previous times, you know, thousands of people will now be living here between all these towers, and many more thousands will be visiting in the summer. You know, you could imagine a really heavy north-south flow of pedestrians coming from Union Station, from, you know, up in the city and coming through this area down to the water. So this mid-block, you know, circulation parallel to Yonge Street, I really kind of encourage you to think more of it as less of back of house and more as a kind of second public realm, to empathetically echo Jana's comments and mention how this kind of landscape public realm component that is sort of mid-block between all your development is really a place to be celebrated and thought of as the extension of the landscape. I guess it's still really in work in progress, but this is going to be a really exciting and important spine, and I would imagine many people would cross through there too. So this is maybe a comment to city or others to really think about that mid-block connection along Harbor Street to be safe for pedestrians and not make people jaywalk through it. So just one comment on that. And lastly, I will just echo Nina Marie here, our channeler here, to advocate for more bird-friendly glazing in the entire development. I think one of your last slides indicates that it's just in the first 16 meters. So I would just really encourage you to have it everywhere as you are in the other phase. But thank you so much. Appreciate the presentation.
Thanks, Fatty. I'll stay with our guest. Gina, are you ready?
Hi, yeah.
Comments?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for the great presentation. So much work clearly has gone into this and so much clarity. I just want to reinforce a lot of what I think Janet said around human scale. I like to imagine myself as a user of these places, sort of moving through and thinking about what's offered to me as experience in the pedestrian realm, both inside the building and on the edges or buildings. And so I think beyond engaging with the building program, there was just sort of a flatness to that experience that just felt like it was open, but maybe not amenitied in a way. So maybe more exploration there as you move forward. And I think that's true very much of the roofscape, which is why I asked. It just feels like an opportunity either for biodiversity, for our like critter friends, or for human occupation in ways that are useful and productive of that incredibly big surface. I think I heard in Emily's question about Freeland Street also a question that I had, which is that between the kind of openings for the vehicular access, which are quite large, and Janet noted as well, and the lack of what feels like amenity or streetscape, it might be a hard edge against that park space. It's eastern facing, so it might begin to feel really barren and cold in a way that I don't think you all intend. Appreciate the desire for for there to be a crispness to the way the architecture meets the ground. But I think there's more that could be done there to make it more sympathetic to the adjacent uses and make it a more hospitable place. So thank you so much. Those are what I could offer.
Okay, thanks very much. Go back to the panel. David?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks again for the presentation. And I do think, having not seen this presentation before, but from what I can certainly see from a public realm perspective, it is definitely trending in the right direction in terms of the mid-block connection, for example, being widened, the opening up to the sky, the increased kind of area of or kind of passageway around the Toronto Star building. I think all of those are positive. I would agree with my panel members in terms of the kind of the human scale, the pedestrian quality of those public spaces around the development that I think likely you'd be getting into more detail as you progress through the design as well. So I just had a couple of comments on that pedestrian realm. Well, actually, one on the green roof. I think you should consider an intensive a strategy there. If you are thinking about it as being a part of the ecology of the site, there aren't many opportunities to look at the natural ecology here, but I think the green roofs are one, and I don't think you'll achieve that with an extensive approach. I think and I also agree with Paul that the terminus to Yonge Street is this really, really important moment in the city. Seems underwhelming. And my question around the bike parking, as a cyclist, always looking for bike parking, I certainly appreciate that there needs to be a lot of it in the public realm, but I feel that the foot of Yonge Street, there's a lot of space there that's dedicated to kind of functional use there, and I feel it needs to be more celebratory, either as a landscape move, a public art move, or something bigger, the kind of bigger idea of Yonge Street as it terminates and meets Queens Quay, but more importantly meets the lake. I think and I agree with my colleagues on the Freeland. I don't know what the solution is, frankly, for Freeland. I get that there's a lot of functional requirements there, but as that Park Street, even if it is a kind of utilitarian corridor, I think there needs to be some kind of bigger landscape ambition there that others have pointed out as well. But thanks for the presentation. It's exciting to see this project for the first time.
Okay, thanks, David. Eric?
Thank you. Great presentation, really good package, very clear. I think it's it's one of the packages that I've seen that actually is quite is very complete. It gives us a full pictures, and I really enjoy the before and after. I think in a way it gives us a really good understanding of how the project has evolved, and overall I think it has a lot of it actually is moving into great direction. The the changes to the site circulation in terms of how it's serviced, pedestrian walks, the adjustment in the width, I think that is very clear. It has a lot of conflicts have been mitigated. So I think that has been some great improvement to that, and also how the retail embraces the edge and animate the edge. I think that is also something that is quite well done. So thank you for that. The obviously keeping, in the future, but I know Pinnacle can do that very well, is how you continue to service and the retail is going to be managed, is just and operationalized, is something just that need to be always at the back of our mind. I'll echo my colleagues on their comments. I think that I agree with them. I won't go into too much more of them, except that I think free land, I know there's a lot of constraint, but free land should be more than 2 trees and some horizontal treatment. So I think there's something to be continued to be explored. I think having the tunnel connecting the east, the north and the south is quite crucial. I was just encouraged that the connectivity for pedestrian become very intuitive, that you can actually, you're walking, you can easily find your way going down under the street, coming back up. That is actually part of that 3-dimensionality of that fluid connectivity, as opposed to tucking it under in some of the key places. And then maybe my last comment here would be just echoing the significant that Paul mentioned about the foot of Yonge Street, the celebration of Yonge Street, the public art, and I think there might be an opportunity because the way you treat the ground floor of Yonge Street is actually quite good. I like the fact that you've opened it up. There's place for pedestrian now to walk. But maybe some of that integration of public art is on the treatment of the facade. Maybe there's something on the 3-dimensionality of your reclining. Maybe it's something that is composed with the facade itself. Just something to think about. I don't know what it is, but I think something that can be quite cool, because you're gonna, there's not a lot of room at grade, but you're rechanging the facade. So something to think about. And otherwise, the way you sculpted the building, how it kind of like it goes, the massing over the one Yonge Street and how it extends, I think it's quite, I think I found it quite cleverly done. So quite appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Kevin, I'll stick with
Thank
the
you.
panel here.
Okay, thank you. Just to reiterate, when we started talking about embodied carbon, keeping the existing Toronto Star building, I just want to applaud that. I think it looks easy, but it's very, very difficult, especially in trying to develop an innovative strategy to incorporate all these high density volumes around it. I just wanted to say that I applaud that. Looking at the concrete frame for the new portion of the development, I do believe this is just so critical that I hope the team looks at some low carbon concrete. I do believe that maybe the higher percentages of supplementary materials, it does get quite expensive and impacts the curing. But I do believe that there are some in and around 30% replacement Portland content SEM fly ash concrete is competitively priced and quick curing. So it just makes a huge impact on the atmosphere, and I would hope that could be part of the strategy as you look at your LCA, which I'm glad that you're doing and you're pursuing that credit under LEED. That's great. I hope you look at that. With respect to the total energy strategy, you know, I would be very impressed if I think a TEDI of 30 would be excellent. I think that's actually the hardest part on the energy management strategy, to achieve the low thermal energy demand. So the reason I say that is that if there are other means to lower the total energy use, I think it's a lot easier. So if the hotel will have a very large domestic hot water demand, if that system could be tied into the district energy system, that will be a low carbon solution. I do also agree that it was mentioned earlier that as that system decarbonizes, the whole project gets the benefit of that, and I think that's very intelligent. But even if we can't make it a full integration of a heat pump solution, even if it's a hybrid solution, perhaps the primary domestic hot water demand could be drawn off the district energy service, or if that's not possible or feasible or financially workable, there could be a partial air source heat pump that delivers the primary hot water, and then maybe there's a small gas fired backup. All of these approaches are still laudable, and I encourage you to research them, and I hope you can implement systems like that to also bring down the total energy use intensity. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. I think last, Jeff, are you still there?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add there. I mean, a couple other ideas on the domestic hot water. I mean, with a hotel shower water, I'd be looking hopefully at some sort of drain water heat recovery commercial system, capture that for reuse. And obviously there's lots of other, thermal strategies. I know people are looking at sewage heat recovery, so lots of opportunities for thermal loads. And I think, investing in a gray water system for your stormwater for flushing toilets in I think some of the housing in the hotel is great. You're going to have a fair amount of stormwater on site. You don't have a lot of irrigation, so I'm assuming you're looking for ways to sort of empty your tanks and keep using that. And again, you're going to be using a huge volume of water with the hotels. So, is that an option to capture some of that shower water as a gray water system if you've already got the treatment? And just try to reuse as much of the water as possible on site. There's some ideas to think about. I will say, because I've been talking to the City of Toronto about their existing building policies, I know you're chasing TGS, but the new 2040 targets under zero carbon are now, the new 2040 targets for the City of Toronto, they're now looking at and debating how they're going to address existing building emissions. So I will just caution you that within the next 18 years, this property will be expected to be zero carbon. And so thinking about what that transition plan looks like now is going to be incredibly important. So recognizing what you're trying to achieve today, and in WSP, you guys wrote the report on the existing building strategy. So I know you're familiar with the benchmark targets. That was 2050 when you guys did it. So accelerating those up 10 years basically means anything you're putting in the building is going to be there in 2040. So really, really focusing on designing a building that's going to be ready, for 2040 is going to be critically important. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. Anyone? I think I've covered everyone. Yeah, Fatty?
Can I just add one? Oh, sorry.
Emily, I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Buddy.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, inspired by sort of Eric's comment about integrating the public art into potentially the recladding of the facade, that there could also be an opportunity of thinking of it instead of as a single standalone piece, could be also integrated into the landscape components and the paving and other kind of lighting potentials all the way through the maybe mid-block connections as well. So maybe the whole site is a big piece of public art that's celebrating one Yonge versus a kind of just one kind of symbolic thing at the end of the street.
Thanks for that, Fatty. Okay, Emily, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I should have told Fadi not to go because that was going to be my comment.
You can,
Sorry,
you can
Emily.
No,
re-emphasize.
it's okay. No, but yeah, I will. Because especially since Fadi, as you were saying in your previous comments, that this is just going to be an amazing destination and an incredible amount of people coming through here. And it seems like though the challenges of, making sure that this is a really active and welcoming public realm. Right now, I have to underscore what others have said, that it feels like it's a circumstance of vehicular movement and transportation. So I would say that maybe to take a step back and put the public realm overlay on it first, and then see how all of these other infrastructures would play into that, because first and foremost, it really needs to be about the experiential aspect of the public realm here to be able to support the vision that I think that is really commendable, and I think that can be achievable. To that point, I'm wondering if you start to think about the fact that you could consolidate some of those services and not have multiple services on Freeland Street. Maybe the bus doesn't get dropped off there. Maybe it gets dropped off one block further up, so that you can have that strong connection across to the park and really make this an incredible active public realm, north to south, but then also to east. It just seems like there's an opportunity there that is disconnected and fragmented with the way that it's has to rely on the kind of vehicular movements right now. And the fact that it sounds like there's a huge amount of servicing that's going on below for all of the buildings. It seems like there's a way that you could work this out so that it doesn't impact the public realm as much as it has on Freeland Street.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Anyone else with any comments? I think I've covered everyone. Okay, I'm going to try and summarize the comments, and then we'll give you an opportunity, David, to respond, and then we'll take a vote from the panel. And I guess I'll start by just saying, reiterate Fatty's point that thousands of people living, working, visiting, this is going to be an amazing destination. And the project, I think, is now sort of on the radar of Torontonians as you start to see the big towers rise and more in the future. People are saying, what is that over there? What's happening there? What's coming? And so I think there's expectation to make this absolutely very, very extraordinary. I think the simple things first. I think the panel really appreciates the fact that the overhead bridge over Harbor Street is gone. You know our views on that, which were very strong. And the second comment, I think, which is important, is that picked up from our last meeting here, is the sort of recognition of the Toronto Star building. As lots of people know, it was one of the first so-called new buildings built on the waterfront, I think in the late 60s. And I remember when that happened, and people thought, what are they doing going down there from King Street? You know, there was all industrial down there. So I think it deserves that special recognition. And I'll come back to that in the context of the suggestion just made about public art and other opportunities. I think one of the strongest series of comments that came out from the panel is related to the public realm. And without reiterating all the comments, I think that has to be given top priority. And as someone has said, perhaps as the key starting point, really think that through in terms of every aspect of the public realm, in terms of the human scale, the experience of walking through east, west, north, south, what's open air, what's covered, the overall quality of the place, the opportunity to perhaps bring in a landscape realm into the interior from the exterior. Basically, how do you move through all that in terms of north, south, east, west? And when people go through it, they want to be astonished. They want to really, really feel that this is such an important, powerful spine of quality and architectural expression. Other suggestions made about perhaps more shaping to the framing of the mid-block spine, I think are important to consider. The issue of Freeland Street received several comments appropriately, I think. And two trees, it just looks like Freeland's been forgotten or left out. And I understand the explanations given, but I think what we're saying here is there's an opportunity, a missed opportunity and a greater ambition needed for a landscape treatment and a link to the huge park that is going to be across the street from Freeland Street. A suggestion perhaps made of consolidating servicing to free up more space on Freeland, but I think we're all saying that deserves much greater attention, and it would be kind of sad if it ended up getting built with two simple street trees on it. A comment about the tunnel connection, which we appreciate instead of the overhead bridge, but it needs to be very clear where it is, where you get in, how you get out, not tucked away someplace, very public, very visible, and inviting. I think that goes without saying. Comments about the energy demand priorities have been several. Appreciate what's been done. Recognition of the embodied carbon, of course, being retained in the STAR building. The suggestion to investigate low carbon concrete, how to reduce the thermal demand, thinking towards 2040, as Jeff just reiterated, towards a zero carbon world, I think is really important to pay a lot of attention to now because it's not that far away. I guess the final sort of area or theme is about this foot of Yonge Street, which is near and dear to me and several other people. And I really like the idea, and I thought about that, about the celebratory opportunity of the foot of Yonge and incorporating the expression of public art into that STAR building, perhaps the facade, the paving materials, the whole unique spot that building occupies. So I think there's many very creative possibilities that clearly could be achieved there. So we'd encourage you to really explore that, and whatever you do, recognize the foot of Yonge Street as part of this project. So I hope that covers the basic themes that everyone has commented on, and give you a chance, David, to respond to what you've heard.
Yeah, and I think, last time we met with the panel, we got a number of comments, and we continued to work after that meeting with staff and with Waterfront Toronto staff to make sure that we addressed and incorporated those comments. So I think there is a commitment to listen and to hear what you're saying and to really work to incorporate these elements into the design. And I think that since you last saw the design, a number of changes were made to Freeland Street based on discussions with staff. We'll continue to work through what we can do and try to identify things that working with staff we can kind of change and alter. Bus drop-off areas and things like that are kind of outside of our scope, but we will continue to work with staff, and I think we hear you loud and clear. And we're as interested as you are in terms of creating a strong Freeland Street, because it works to our advantage too. It is a beautiful park that's being proposed there. There's really no way to avoid that, and it's just the functional needs of the site dictated that we put the servicing where it is, and we'll do our best to try to address that and work with staff to make the changes. And we appreciate the comments, and thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, David. So I just need to take a vote of the panel. I think what I'm hearing from everyone is a vote of support. Anyone disagree? No? Online? Agreement? Okay. Unanimous. Thank you very much, David, and your team. We look forward to seeing this evolve.
Thank you. Really
Okay.
appreciate it. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
That's great. All right. So I guess it's lunchtime.
It is lunchtime.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. For the afternoon session, we have the Basin Media Hub before us for issues identification. So there won't be a vote at the end, and this is really a chance for people to see the project and to raise any issues or suggestions or concerns you may have that'll help them as they evolve. So, Josh, are you there?
Yep,
The
I'm here.
introduction? There you are. Okay.
Yeah,
You want
I'm
to take
here.
it away?
Yeah, let me share my screen. There we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Great. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Josh Hilbert. I'm a development planner with Waterfront Toronto. and welcome to what I think is the second item on today's DRP agenda for the Basin Media Hub site, which is highlighted here in pink and located on the north side of the shipping channel in the Portlands district. This is the project's first presentation to the panel, so it's here for issues identification. The proponent team consists of Hackman Capital and the MBS Group. The design team consists of SOM and landscape architects Melk. And could we now have the proponent and design team members please introduce themselves to the panel?
Absolutely. I'm James Dewald. I'm the design lead at SOM for the project. We're also working with Adamson, who is the architect of record based in Toronto. I myself, with my team, am based in Los Angeles. Dan Herman from SOM is also on the line.
Hi, everybody. Dan Herman with SOM. I'm the project manager for the SOM team.
Michael Lomax, Cressa, project manager in Toronto for the overall project Hackman in the Basin Studios.
Rob Cameron, basically an area consultant. I've done a bit of work down in there with the FedEx building and some of the other work in the Portlands, so helping out.
And good morning, everyone. Brian Glodney with Hackman Capital. Pleased to make your acquaintance and looking forward to speaking with everyone today.
Great, thanks everyone. We also have several city staff joining us for today's presentation. From Urban Design, we have the director.
Sorry, I missed myself. Erika Herrera here. I'm from NCW. I'm part of the sustainability consultant team from this project.
Oh, great, thank you, and apologies. Did I miss anyone else from the consultant teams? No, I guess that's it. As I was saying, there's some city staff that have joined us for today's presentation. From the Urban Design Department, we have Amelia Floro, the Director of Urban Design. From Community Planning, Community Planning Manager Carly Bowman, Community Planning Project Manager Anthony Kittle, Community Planner Chris Hilbrecht, and from the Strategic Initiatives Policy and Analysis, or SEPA Department, we have Environmental Planner Shane Stott. So this is the site location seen in this aerial shot with a subject outlined in the dotted pink line. It's a rather large site with over 400 meters of frontage onto the shipping channel. Basin Street runs east-west and forms a northern boundary with Commissioner Street located just north of that. We have the shipping channel to the south, turning Basin to the east. And for transit connections, TTC bus routes 72B and C are shown here in red, running along Commissioners and Carlaw, which can currently provide access to the site. However, the future vision for transit in the Portlands includes an east-west dedicated LRT line along Commissioner Street and a north-south dedicated LRT line along the future Broadview extension, which is planned to run approximately where Bouchette Street is currently located and will eventually intersect with the future Commissioner's Street LRT line. This 3D image highlights the existing context and the industrial nature of the site and the surrounding Portlands area. To the south, across the shipping channel, is the Hearn Generating Station and Chimney Stack. To the west is the Basin Transformer Station, Pinewood Studios, as well as their expansion lands, as well as the future Don River Extension and River Valley, currently under construction as part of the Portlands Flood Protection Project. And to the north, we can see the FedEx Shipping Center, the Commissioner Street Transfer Station and Stack, and McCleary Park, just north of that, as well as Lakeshore Boulevard East. So for a little project background, the site has most recently been used for soil and aggregate storage and as a construction works yard for the Gardner Reconstruction Project, as well as the location of the offices of Create TO. Also located on the site is the Sun Oil Building fronting onto Basin Street, which is listed on the city's heritage inventory. For some brief policy context, the Central Waterfront Secondary Plan and applicable Portlands area specific policies were brought into force by the Ontario Land Tribunal, or OLT, in May of 2021. And the area is planned for production, interactive, and creative, or PIC core land uses, as well as a public promenade along the water's edges. Some of the major programs associated with the site include the PIC core urban design guidelines. The draft guidelines were presented to this panel back in January of this year. An Indigenous engagement program is currently under development. and further refinements to the guidelines are ongoing and are anticipated to be completed by Q1 of 2023. Another major study is the continuation of the Broadview Avenue Extension Municipal Class Environmental Assessment, as well as detailed design of the future's Water's Edge Promenade along the shipping channel and the turning basin. And with regard to zoning, the current zoning is based on the City of Toronto zoning bylaw 43886 and is zoned I4D2 or heavy industrial, with a minor variance approval that allows for production studio uses on the public portion of the lands. The Portland's planning framework vision and the OLT approved official plan modification policies provide specific direction on land use, built form, and parking. However, updated zoning for the site will be considered at the upcoming June 29th Community Council meeting and then the July 16th City Council meeting. And this updated zoning will include the site within an employment industrial zone with studio permissions and provide open space natural zone permissions for the Water's Edge Promenade areas. The new zoning will also establish commercial animation uses that will activate the open space natural zones along the WEP and the street frontages and set out basic development standards for built form, height, density, and on-site parking requirements. The PICOR urban design guidelines, once completed and formally adopted by council, will provide some further design direction for the PICOR district as a whole, in which this site is located, while allowing for flexibility in their application on specific sites and projects. This slide just illustrates where the proposal is in the review and approvals process, and it's at the very beginning at this point. The project team presented this proposal to City and WT staff at a recent pre-application consultation, but no formal development application has been submitted as yet. And this is the project's first time before the panel, and it's here for issues identification. And finally, these are some of the areas we'd like to highlight for the panel for their consideration from both City staff and from Waterfront Toronto staff. Regarding the Water's Edge Promenade, consider Indigenous placekeeping opportunities, improved naturalization and biodiversity, opportunities for year-round activation, and access for both studio workers and the general public. Regarding alignment with Portland's planning policy and the emerging PICOR urban design guidelines, comments on the proposed secure perimeter and key view corridors are welcomed, as well as on the proposal's integration with the public realm. For sustainability strategies, does the proposal meet Waterfront Toronto and City of Toronto objectives, including the Toronto Green Standards performance and consideration of the city's climate emergency declaration? And are there opportunities to go further than what is currently being proposed? And finally, with regard to architecture, panel comments would be welcomed on the design of the perimeter gates, any vertical elements and elevated walkways, the treatment of the above-grade parking structure, the built form typologies for the proposed production and office uses on site, proposed ground floor programs and facade designs, and thoughts on adaptability, which refers to designing these buildings for future reuse and the long-term evolution of this waterfront site. So that concludes the staff introduction. I'll hand off to the proponent team now to continue with their presentation.
Thank you very much, Josh. And while we kind of run through these first couple slides, I will then turn it over to James, who can walk through in more detail the approach, the concept to date, to highlight specifically and respond to specifically some of those comments already within that bullet point list. But once again, my name is Brian Gladney with Hackman Capital Partners, Senior Vice President. I help oversee the planning, entitlements, and design for the company across our global platform for all of our product types. But very appreciative here today to be with all of you. This is very exciting for us within the Toronto market. It's an incredible opportunity that we've been chasing, looking at, dreaming of for a couple years now, and we're finally at the step where we're moving towards making this project a reality, working alongside with our city partners, Creatio, the councillor, the mayor's office, film commission. This is just a very exciting opportunity for us as a company as we expand into the Toronto market, but also as we understand Toronto's vision for media and production industry at large, in really bolstering that within the community and providing a top tier, high quality production studio that will be a viable component of the economy for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. If you could go to the next page, James, please. By way of a little bit of background of what we're going to go over today, again, we'll go through an introduction very quickly. Thank you, Josh, for going through some of the site and context. We can move through that as well. And then again, I will turn that over to James to walk through the latter part of the deck. But overall, as a company, we are the world's largest independent owner and operator of studios. We are located across the US in major markets, now Toronto in Canada, soon to be Vancouver. We also operate in London, Ireland, Scotland, and mainland Europe as a real estate company. And so developing studios is nothing new to us. We're used to working in a diverse number of contexts, communities, cities, policy overlays, design overlays. This is nothing new to us, but what we do try and do, and you see here an assortment of different projects around the globe, is it's important to us that every studio maintains its unique identity, that each one of them celebrates the context and the heritage of those locations. And so you see that we don't necessarily have a standard palette, we don't necessarily have a standard architectural type, but we really try and craft each one and tailor each studio to those local communities. And so this is a really exciting opportunity for us to share this concept with you today in trying to provide, again, that world-class stage facility. And so much of what we try and do, and James will talk about it more so, is understanding the unique demands of what a studio is. You know, we have also partnered with ourselves as our operating arm, the MBS Group. They are the largest independent operator of studios. And so with our real estate and operations groups together, we have our finger on the pulse, live, daily, working with our own real estate and our own studios, but also working at studios and with productions outside of our holdings through the MBS Group. And so we have a very clear, very consistent, very fast feedback loop about what productions demand today, what they're looking at in the near-term future, and what technology and media facilities and studios need to offer in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And so we've always got our eye looking forward and down the line of the evolution of a studio. And with that, I think it's always important for us to frame the context of a studio use. It's a semi-industrial use, and a lot of the times we are in infill environments, very similar to what Basin is today. And even though the context isn't necessarily there today, in today's time, it will be in the future. There are grand plans for this area, and we understand that those edges need to be treated in a way that interact and respect the future context, albeit not necessarily there today. So there's always that little bit of tension, but it's the way that I like to describe working with studios and design is there's a natural tension between the use, the architecture, the visibility, the accessibility. And James will highlight some of those moments and how we're trying to balance those tensions between visibility, security, privacy, and the industrial nature, let's say, of some of the production factory of what a studio truly is. And so with that, I won't speak any longer, but just wanted to give a brief overview of what the studio is, how excited we are to be here, how appreciative we are of all of the partners that we are working with and all the support that we've gotten across the City of Toronto communities and departments. And again, thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions as they come up.
Thanks a lot, Brian. I think I'll take it from here. So I'm here on behalf of SOM presenting the design of the project. We wanted to start off with a few goals, and Hackman and MBS have been an incredible partner in the development of this work. So the first is really to create this purpose-built, state-of-the-art production studio in the heart of Toronto, so less than 5 kilometers from downtown. The second is to foster robust production growth and high-quality job creation in the area and within the community. Third, to design high-quality architecture and open spaces that enhance the human experience in the public realm. And lastly, to promote environmental performance and wellness for production facilities. We've assembled a great team, and what you'll see today represents largely the efforts of SOM working closely with Hackman and the MBS Group to understand the massing, the organization of the site, the architectural character of the project. And as we've developed that, we've started to grow our team. We are working with Adamson, the local architect of record on the project. We've recently onboarded Melk, who will be providing landscape design for the project. What you see today does not yet incorporate the work of Melk, so the landscape and open spaces have a long way to kind of develop. And we have a full consultant team at this point, including RWDI, Walter Freddy for civil, MCW for sustainability. And this consultant team is all local in Toronto and is very familiar with issues and applications of things like the Toronto Green Standards to our project and to our project sites. So we're validating many of those with the team as we speak. As Brian mentioned, and as many of you on the call know, this has been a process that really started at the beginning of the year for us with really kind of planning and pre-planning for the project. And notably, this period of the site-specific bylaw, we've been working very closely with Anthony Kittle and his team at the city to help develop a draft bylaw, which will be going to Community Council on the 29th later this week and to City Council next month. And everything that you see today is designed to conform fully with the intents of the PIC design, the PIC core design guidelines, this new draft bylaw for the project site, and the goals of the Portland's planning framework, which you all are very familiar with. We are aiming to submit our site plan application sometime in late July, and we hope to come back to see you all. I noticed that I did not adjust this because I know you're away in August, but sometime in September to come to you with our second schematic design presentation to the Waterfront Design Review Panel. So some notes on site and context. Josh already did an excellent job describing a lot of this, but I'll provide a little additional context and some of our thinking on the project. As mentioned, the Basin Studios project is right in the Portland's planning framework, a little less than 5 kilometers from downtown Toronto. The site has a rich cultural and natural history as a marsh that was developed into a working port and as a critical part of the Indigenous history of this part of Ontario along the waterfront of Lake Ontario. That history is marked by the transition from that marshland into a series of industrial uses to support the industrial operations in the city of Toronto, and a large-scale land reclamation project occurring in the early part of the 1900s that transformed this site from this marshland or wetland along the lakefront into what we see today as this industrial port. Also interesting to keep in mind are some of the uses that have been a part of this area and part of this project site: warehousing, energy generation, the movement of people and goods into and around Toronto and the region. As Josh mentioned, the site today is largely industrial, and its context reflects that. Our immediate neighbors here are the Hearn Generating Station across the ship channel, the FedEx facility that you see across Basin Street, Pinewood Studios, which is another production facility immediately adjacent to us, and a variety of other uses associated with the city and similar institutions like the Mayfair Club. This is what the streetscape looks like today. A few images of FedEx on the top, others around the project site, Pinewood towards the bottom. And this is what our site looks like today, noting the proposed future improvements to the dock wall, which would allow for new public spaces along the waterfront, and a few of the industrial landmarks, including the Sun Oil building on the northwest corner of our project site, and prominent views to the Hearn Generating Station across the ship channel. We also know that this is an area that's had a lot of attention, effort, and work going into reimagining what it might be for the future of the city of Toronto, and we're excited to participate in that. You can see some of the Don River Mouth Revitalization Project occurring in the foreground, Villiers Island starting to take shape, and our project at the corner of the ship channel in the turning basin in the background here. Just a couple of notable projects here, the Leslie Lookout project right at the end of the ship channel, Villiers Island, and the revitalization of some of the natural spaces that are part of this. And we're very excited that we'll get to participate in really reimagining what this extension of downtown Toronto might bring and what kinds of benchmarks it might set for urbanism and development moving forward. And critically, this public space extension, this waterfront promenade and waterfront placemaking being such a critical aspect to the experience of the city of Toronto, really being extended through the Portlands is a fantastic opportunity and something that we're excited to participate in. So some planning considerations come up next. We sit within the Portland's planning framework within what's called the PIC core, and our project occupies essentially 4 blocks within the PIC core that we're calling here Basin Studios. As mentioned, in that PIC core, we are fully in line with the production uses implied by that and as codified in the draft zoning bylaw that will apply to the site. You can see the adjacency between the PIC core and some other light industrial port uses, PIC mixed use, and then mixed use on Villiers Island. As noted, the site is transforming, and there's a variety of conditions that exist today that will be different in the future. Notably, access today comes largely from Lakeshore Boulevard on Bouchette, Logan, and Carlaw Avenue. In the future, that Broadview extension will be something that, as Josh mentioned, will come in at approximately the same position as Bouchette. Also worth mentioning here is that Pinewood Studios is also a secure perimeter production facility. So the line that you see here does represent some discontinuity in terms of access across Basin Street through that facility. So Commissioner Street is really the primary link between Villiers Island and some of the other uses east and west of the project site. As Josh also mentioned, today we have the 72 BC. We also have proposed the proposed Ontario line and the Broadview LRT, which intersect at Commissioner Street and provide great access in the future for public transit to the project site. The dots noted along our perimeter are the primary pedestrian access points to the project. There's also a cycling network that is existing and will be drastically improved in the future. A few points to note are that Carlaw Avenue and the Martin Goodman Trail are the existing network elements that are the most significant, and some of the dotted elements represent the expansion of that network along the waterfront promenade on Basin Street, on Commissioner Street, which will only serve to increase opportunities for connectivity between the project and the rest of the city in the future. And lastly, open space. The most significant open space that the project will contribute to is the water edge promenade along the ship channel and along the turning basin, which does serve to connect a series of cultural and open space functions across the project planning area of the Portlands. And key views and heritage, really recognizing the industrial heritage of this project site, the Sun Oil building on our project site, but also the stacks of the McCleary transfer station and the Hearn being visual anchors throughout the Portlands. And the Portlands planning framework has identified 4 views that that could potentially impact our project site and are really about maintaining visual access to the Hearn from Lakeshore Boulevard. So we prepared a couple of preliminary visual simulations of the site as it exists today, and noting really that the project envelope that we're proposing today is fully within the height envelope and boundaries that are established in the bylaw and within the Portlands planning framework, and that every effort is really made here to try to create a project which is able to foreground, especially along the axes of Logan Street, the importance of the Hearn in maintaining an industrial character for the project site. As Brian mentioned, there is this tension between the necessity of, say, the security and enclosure of the studio lot with the desire to be a good neighbor and to really think about how we bring these two things together on this project site to create something that is both human in terms of its urban presence and also highly functional and a job creation center and a desirable production facility to come work at within the city of Toronto. And you'll see some of the strategies that we've used to try to do that. So from an urban planning perspective, there's 8 principles that we brought to the project that are derived from materials in the PIC Core Urban Design Guidelines and the Portlands Planning Framework. First and foremost is maintaining that public waterfront promenade along the ship channel and the turning basin, dividing the project site into a series of 4 blocks, which provide an urban scale and a more walkable kind of urban realm. Understanding the third element here, that film-friendly campuses do require a secure perimeter, and that the gateways into this project site along those internal streets will provide opportunities for identity and placemaking. We're looking at the sound stages as opportunities to articulate the architecture so that we have a scale which is representative of the uses that are occurring within, so you can read each stage. We've made a specific effort to set those stages back from public frontages wherever possible, and to activate those with 2-story office and production support uses that can engage more with those frontages. We wanted to find a way of establishing a critical architectural identity for the project that incorporates the heritage building on that northwest corner that you can see here, and also brings some notable architectural elements into a vertical dimension that you'll see in the project, to bring a kind of density that will activate this project site in the near term and into the future. Placemaking will be a critical aspect of this as well, and how we engage with that waterfront, public waterfront, and that's something we'd love to talk to you about today. And lastly, we really want to incorporate cutting-edge strategies for sustainability to help to reduce carbon and to promote healthy ecosystems for the project. There's a number of those that you'll see today, and we're still working with our consultant team to validate those moving forward. So I'll talk briefly about the studio organization, in other words, kind of how things are set up on the project site. There's a variety of uses that fall under the broad envelope of production studio facilities, and those include things from black box sound stages to areas that we call base camp, which are essentially temporary vehicle staging and uses associated with the stages in development. More conventional kind of office spaces that support the productions, along with many others, and specialty uses that include hair and makeup, wardrobe, facilities for storage of equipment and sets, and then also the construction of sets that will occur on site in some mill spaces. In total, the site area represents about 52,000 square meters, or just under 14 acres. We have a gross project area of around 56,000 square meters, which puts our FSI, or density, at just over 1.1, and we are in an area that's zoned up to 2.5 FSI. The project includes 12 sound stages that represent about 40% of the total project area, production support, production office, and executive production offices that are split roughly in thirds that comprise the rest of the 60% of that project area. It also includes 12,000 square meters of base camp area, around 593 parking spaces, and 140 bike parking spaces that meet the Toronto bicycle standards. As mentioned, the project is divided into these 4 quadrants that have new right-of-ways that are established in these blocks along Logan, and along New Basin. We also maintain access from Carlaw to New Basin, really the intent being to extend the street network through the organization of the project site to enable future adaptability and to think about how this studio lot might become a good kind of working neighbor within the urban framework of the Portlands and the PIC core. As mentioned, we also are needing to maintain the secure perimeter, and what this diagram represents are the really 5 gates that represent this project. Broadview Gate currently will have no access as it's adjacent on the west side to a transformer station, which we do not know currently what the time frame is for that to be removed. We have the Waterfront Gate on the south side along the Logan axes, and then we have 3 gates along the Basin Street side, which are the primary points of access for vehicle, pedestrians, bikes, fire, etc. This is a rough overview of the project site. You can see the distribution of those 12 sound stages. Ground level and level 2 include production office and production support in those liners that we had mentioned. We also have executive production office in this blue volume here and this 2-story bar here. and we have our parking consolidated within a single structure that is located here that's 5 levels above the podium. In terms of ground level uses, you can see the sound stages here marked in orange and those production support, production office spaces lining those, trying to step down the scale of those stages to the public realm and allow for future adaptability of these uses, which really transform in parallel with the productions that are occurring on the project site. The Heritage Building retained as production office in the northwest corner of the project site, and the project being serviced by a central plant, which consolidates many of the systems and resources of the project site in a way that is both kind of spatially efficient, but also more environmentally efficient for the project. In terms of heights, the draft bylaw allows for heights up to 46 meters with a base height of 42 meters. Currently, the entire project sits within that height envelope, and there's a few key datums that you'll notice as we go through the design. The first one is at 10 meters, and that's those 2 stories of production office, production support, on top of which there's an extensive green roof network that's also amenitized, so you'll see that. The sound stages themselves extend up to around 22 meters, and the highest elements of the project go up to about 42, including this executive production office here, and some slightly lower elements at around 30 meters for the parking garage and for the executive production office on the northeast corner of the project site. So we'd now move into character and placemaking, and then open up the floor to your comments and questions. So we recognize and were inspired by Toronto's industrial heritage and also the industrial heritage of the Portlands and the project site. And there's 3 specific ways that we started looking at that. The first was through shape, the second through color, and the third is through material. And you'll see these emerging in the project in a few specific ways. We also recognize that this is a project which compromises essentially 4 city blocks, and that the project will maintain a better posture, an urban posture to the project site by incorporating a variety of architectural types that really reflect the nature of the uses that they contain. So you'll see here very clearly identifiable elements for stages, production support, production office, executive production office, gates, open space, base camp, and parking as a few that you'll see kind of coming up in the project. So this is the Basin studio facility. As you can see, we are located quite close to downtown. Very excited about this waterfront location as well, and the opportunity of that 400 meters of public space along the promenade is something that's really critical to the design and the engagement of the project. Going down to the eye level of that, you can see the 10-meter datum that I described as that liner of production office and production support facilities. Where those are directly adjacent to the stages and are only corridors, those become opportunities for art and signage, which you'll see in just a second. And the roof profile of the stages and some of the signage and graphics that are associated with those really try to create a sense of scale and a legibility of this project as a collection of different uses that support production. In the back, you can see the McCleary stack. So looking at that corner between the ship channel and the turning basin, you can see landscape, which could be an opportunity to reflect the natural history of the project site, murals, which could be an opportunity to engage with the indigenous history of the project site, and also mixing that in with production graphics and signage, which give people along the promenade some kind of a glimpse of what's happening on the interior of the project site. There may also be other opportunities for art, including sculptural or 3-dimensional works along the promenade, and these are really just placeholders at the moment for a broader conversation to understand how these can be best integrated into the public realm of the project along the promenade. Now we're moving a little bit west and looking on the axes of Logan. This is looking north. The McCleary stack is here in the background. You can see the executive production office here, some areas of the project site that could be shared amenities for the campus that could have larger scale operables and would be adaptable for different kinds of uses because of that adjacency to the promenade, and the gate and bridge and signage elements, which are integrated into the architecture and step back to create a kind of outdoor room at that edge. And you'll see more about that in just a second. We're looking to create a very distinct architectural character for the office components that raise up above that two-story base. And one of the elements that we think could be a really strong story for these and an interesting area to develop a carbon narrative for the project is the use of mass timber, which we're currently validating with our consultants. We also think that the use of brick is something that's been, it's really prevalent across industrial buildings in Toronto, and that offers a really unique possibility of creating an industrial texture that has scale and grain, and we're developing design details that really allow that to have a unique presence on the project site and a reference to Toronto's industrial past. A notion about that outdoor room, stepping the gate back so that that space of the promenade can open up into a space that could be programmed in a variety of different ways. These are just a few, not specific necessarily, but opportunities to really have uses or temporary events or things like that that could work with the uses that are happening within the studio lot and create those notions of outdoor rooms. Along the promenade itself, this is a space that we really need to develop with our landscape partners, with Melk, but this does represent a notion that the port is still a working component of the Portlands, so that the edge is kind of a working dock facility, and that the introduction of new landscaping can do more than just providing green or shade or cover, but it actually can become part of the ecological extension of open space and landscaping on the project site. On the left side, you see a few key entries that allow for access between, for people who work within the project site out to the promenade. This is an amazing open space amenity that can provide opportunities not only for the public, but also for utilization and activation by people within the project. Our approach to those lower two stories is really about adaptability. So this is adaptability in terms of having some consistent element that allows for different uses across the project site while maintaining a more unified approach, but also something which could allow for adaptability in the future as uses transition, as this becomes a more active portion of the Portlands, and whatever the highest and best uses are associated with production, those are things that can evolve moving forward. And noting that there is this desire to create steps between the waterfront, this production office, and the stages that really speak to that transition in scale between the sound stages and that public waterfront, and the possibility of including extensive green roofs that are also amenitized and can provide a plane for movement and access around the project site. As you may know, the gates are often the identity defining element of the studio, both because they form these critical interfaces between the public and the project, and because they provide these glimpses in to the project site. So these are just a few that are projects around Los Angeles and our MBS and Hackman projects around the world. And we've tried to find a way that the gates themselves are thoroughly integrated into the architecture and provide a sense of passage. So this is on the northwest corner of the project site, the Heritage Gate, which relates to that existing Sun Oil building, which is retained here, and new structures which allow for a point of access in at that northwest corner. This is primarily used for service access to the main mill. This is the main gate on the axes of Logan. You can see the stack of the Hearn generating station is aligned precisely to the center line of Logan Street, that the gateway and signage is integrated into a bridge element here that provides access between various green spaces and open spaces on the roof of those production support elements, and that security is integrated in such a way that it provides a threshold without providing too much of a barrier. Those are some of the goals. And finally, this is the Carlaw Gate on the northeast corner of the project site. You can see on the left side of this image the promenade turning along the turning basin, and the facade of the building stepping back so that the primary security access point is still at the corner of the project site, but that's lower, that's more reduced, and that for the most part, the gateways are integrated into spaces between the architectural volumes at the ground. You can also see here this executive production office space, which could have distinctive finishes on its lower components and would also be planned in mass timber, at least is something that we're validating now. So moving into the project site, New Basin Street, which moves east and west and divides the north and south quadrants of the project site, is the primary axis for servicing all the stages. On the right side of this image, you can see the base camp spaces, which are really critical for the studio production uses. And on the upper portion of this image, you can see the parking garage, which is screened in a metal mesh that echoes the undulation and scalloping of the office facades. The parking garage is planned with flat floor plates and with a solar canopy along the top of that project or of that component of the project, and is being considered in terms of future adaptability should parking demands be less in the future than they might be initially. And this is the last character image that we have here. It's looking at the base camp area that we saw before at the level 3 bridge connecting between various quadrants. There are a number of smaller scale production bungalows up here, amenitized green spaces, and a collection of architectures that really try to create a sense of unity and variety across the project site, both in terms of its materiality and scale. Oops, one more. Forgot about this one. This is one of those amenitized spaces on level 3 with those production bungalows, with the executive production office, and the possibility of really activating and creating a kind of town square at that upper level. One point to note is that the production uses are very active. There's a lot of movement, priority for vehicles and staging and things like that. And this level 3 space really serves as an internal counterpoint to that and provides a series of more pedestrian focused amenities at that level. So with that, here's a kind of brief summary of images that describe the project and some of its ambitions, and we'd love to hear your comments and questions. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much for that presentation. So we're going to move to questions from the panel, and let's just get my list. So let's start in the room here. Pat, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. There are 4 blocks. So the larger site is organized into 4 blocks, and those there's streets that make those blocks. And are those streets private streets or municipal streets?
The streets that are within the project boundaries will be private for the short term, but they are designed to integrate with the network of public streets that are planned around the project site.
So when we no longer film and need this kind of facility, they default back to regular City of Toronto streets, kind of. Yeah.
That's right. I think there's some aspects of how these may be improved, which could support for the flexible uses that occur on the project site. So for example, we're looking into a curbless design that allows for a better utilization of that ground plane, and there may be some need for adapting those in the future if or when they would revert back to city streets, but the right of ways that are being planned and the integration with the existing street network would allow that to happen in the future.
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks. Janet?
Yeah, thank you. Just 2 questions. One, the height of the perimeter at the lowest data of the 10 meters, is there any opportunity to reduce that at points, or does that need to be 10 meters because of the security issue or the program that it's enclosing?
So I think that is really calibrated based on the needs of uses that are directly associated with the stages in terms of production. So those two levels on the lower level allow for production support functions that need direct access at grade between the stages and those supports. And at the upper levels, it's supporting offices, wardrobes, things like that also support the stages. So we do need two levels of a program along those edges. And I think we see opportunities to create a real legible street wall at that level that can create a datum that provides some kind of regularity within the urban realm. I think that said, there are absolutely opportunities to create variety in terms of height and scale. And we're open to kind of comments on that from the group there, from the panel.
Thanks. And then my next question is, I don't know if you know this yet, but I'm just curious what the average population of the workforce is in that precinct. Like on a daily basis, hundreds, thousands?
For
the entire
studio
film
itself?
studio, yeah.
You know, it really varies day by day and by productions, depending on if it's, you know, ultimately a live audience show or it's a motion picture or it's a single camera multicam. And so our daily population changes pretty dramatically. We have the kind of standard baseline that's associated with the production office that might be the daily users. There might be some long-term shows. In the media industry now, we've really transitioned from short-term season by season leases to longer-term multi-year leases. And so our populations have become over time a little bit more static and a little bit more fixed. But this lot overall is built to be highly flexible so it can adapt and accept different production types over time. And so I'm not trying to dance around the population definition for you, just generally that it's a fluctuating number, but at the square footage we're at, if I had to imagine what the fixed users are today, it's going to be a minimum of around 500 people, with that fluctuating to a much greater number based off of the production crews that are there, support staff that are there, craftsmen that may come in, catering and support services that may come in. So it dramatically differs production to production, if I may.
Thank you.
Okay, Eric?
Yeah, two questions. And that might be to Waterfront Toronto. With regard to this, there was a reference about the substation, about potentially moving in the future, or I just wanted to know if there was any, what's the status?
I think what's being referred to is this substation here west of the project site, where currently there's no access on the west side of our project site.
Yeah. But so my question is, you mentioned that it may move in the future, and is that the case, or is it
Well, I mean, it's in the plan, Eric, that the city did. I don't know that they have any immediate plans to do it. I think there's negotiations happening with Hydro. So I don't think there's any real timetable around when that is going to get moved.
The promenade itself, is the design and construction of the promenade part of the project? Who is responsible for kind of its implementation? Is it as part of the?
So ultimately, it's a partnership between ourselves and Creatio. We will be working in partnership hand in hand with Creatio throughout the process. But from a design standpoint, a construction standpoint, the HCP team will be responsible for the implementation and execution of that. Provided that there's going to be a lot of collaboration between ourselves, Creatio, city departments, yourselves, and with a distinct understanding that this is still a working ship channel, not a leisure ship channel, excuse me, tongue twister there. So as you look through the promenade itself in terms of the execution, again, we come back to tension of balancing the activation, the creativity of the promenade frontage itself, and balancing that with the desired need for it to be maintained as a working ship channel. And so that's one of those tensions that we'll continually try and balance through the design itself, understanding that there's a fixed baseline, for what the prototype, let's say, for the promenade may want to be, and then discovering and exploring, as James was pointing out, either at the intersection of Ship Channel or Turning Basin, or at the gateway of the primary studio, for moments of greater interest or greater design where we could maybe focus that energy around some specific moments.
So yeah, so that leads to my next question, my last question, which is if you go to page 43, it's an interest one. This one. If we look, there is what appears to be some alteration to the wall, like right at as the basin and the channel kind of meets, where it looks. Is that just a creative license in terms of some interesting ideas about providing better access, being able to get to the water, to touch, or to whatever? I just wanted to know the kind of what parameters, or is this something that is being envisioned, or is it more an artistic license right now about what we're looking at? Just trying to understand your thinking.
We're
Well,
very much
maybe
interested
James.
in opportunities for engagement between the water and the promenade. I would say that none of this has been validated with the Port Authority, and there are not currently guidelines that exist for requirements for the promenade itself. So we are absolutely looking forward to guidance, help, and working with various authorities, including Create TO, the Port Authority, and others to find something that balances the needs of the working port with the opportunity of this leisure space and this network of open spaces that extends along the waterfront.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Let's go to our guests. Gina, are you there?
Hi, no questions.
No questions? Okay. Emily?
Thank you.
No questions as well.
No questions? Okay. I don't know, is Nina Marie now with
Yes.
us? Are you there?
Hi.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Thanks so much. I really appreciated that. My questions are actually already answered. Thank you, particularly around population of the site. So thanks.
Okay, great. Okay, David.
Yeah, I just had, thanks for your presentation. I just had a couple of questions regarding the views from Basin Street and really connecting these views, kind of connecting back into the city neighborhoods to the north and whatnot. So I'm specifically interested, if you go to slide 32, I'd like to understand.
I don't know that I have
slide, yeah, right there.
Yep.
Okay, great, got it. So my question for you, does the if you were to stand at Basin and Carlaw, is part of this is part of the south building in the view of that from that Carlaw right of way? In other words, if you were to extend Carlaw straight down, would you hit the building?
You would hit the building on the southeast quadrant, and this is in line, I think, with the Portland's planning framework. If you're looking at the specifics of the Carlaw extension, there's no planned vehicle access to the corner of the Ship Channel and the Turning Basin, and Carlaw extends to New Basin and then turns west, if that makes sense.
Yep, thanks for that clarification.
I can show you the view there as well. That is one of those lower components of the project site. So that's something that you do still keep a lower scaled architectural volume facing to the south there.
Right, got it. Okay. And secondly, if you were to stand now at Logan, what would be blocking your view straight through there? Are there bridges? It looks like there's land. I'm not sure what I'm seeing entirely when I look through there, but what's blocking the view there?
So what you're seeing here are the components of the gate that provide access into the project site. So there's a security kiosk with gate arms. There is an operable security gate element that would largely stay open and might only be closed after hours or outside of production hours. And you're seeing this bridging element that integrates signage and graphics identity elements with access between the various level 3 green roof components of the project.
So that the large white element at the end there, and it looks like something's crossing in front of that. Is that the Hearn back there with a Is there another bridge beyond? What am I?
So this is the Hearn. There is a gate that is along Basin Street on the north side of the project that you're looking at here in the foreground. And there's another gate along the promenade on the south side of the project. So you're seeing more or less those same components, the security gate elements, some of the pedestrian access points on that south side, and that bridge and signage component here that form that gateway.
All right, good. That was it for me. Thanks.
Okay, let's see. Jeff. You there, Jeff?
Yep, thanks, Paul. So I have a general question, two questions, largely about the roof area. You've got a lot of impervious surface area, you're on the water. So I'm wondering about, one, how you're treating stormwater and, and then opportunities using the roof, whether, there's green roof opportunities, solar, obviously with that much surface area. Just wondering how that works with your typical studio designs, roof capacity, access issues, maintenance, liability. I know it's a pretty specific use condition, so just curious what your thinking on that is.
Yeah, thanks for that question. And I think the density of the project is one that really points towards on-site solar as a real opportunity to start to offset the energy demands of the project site. And we are looking at two real roof levels in the project, one at the stage level and at the parking garage level, where we have integrated solar into each of those areas of the roof. So that's actively used for energy generation. And then we also have this lower level at that 10-meter datum that is an intensive green roof area that is also amenitized and provides access between some of the production support areas. That's being designed as a blue roof system, which means that it has a small reservoir at the base of the green roof buildup that can hold and retain a certain amount of stormwater. We are also looking at opportunities for the design of the hardscape areas and softscape areas to start to allow for a certain amount of infiltration, although that's very challenging with this project site because our water table is about 80 centimeters below the finished grade of the project. So that does vary with the level of the lake, but that is one of the challenges that we're trying to address through heavily utilizing the roof for energy generation at the upper level and for using it for stormwater biodiversity and kind of green space that provides wellness opportunities on the lower level.
And if I could just add, I just from a global perspective, studio roofs are challenged in the fact that they are long span, clear spaces. And so one of the challenges we see as we're working around different locales and environments is trying to reduce those loads as much as possible. And clearly snow loads are something we have to deal with in this market. So again, a little bit of the conflict of a green roof idea on the stages has led us to have weight challenges at times, has led us to have water intrusion issues at times. And so as James pointed out, it was really this approach of providing a layered roof strategy depending on effectively what the use was below that roof, and then really then aligning it to a sustainability strategy from the roof plane.
That's great. That was a better answer than I expected.
Okay.
Good.
Fatty. Fatty, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much. A lot of my questions were answered. I just have one very quick question about how the programming around the perimeter of this would work. So if I would imagine some of the promenade spaces might have restaurants that are open to the public or whoever else, is this something that just gets leased by the film studio to a vendor, or is this a kind of, you can kind of have everything kind of internally managed? Like how would the public facing edge interface from a kind of retail point of view, let's say, with the film studio specific private spaces? Or how does that accessibility, how does that activation work? How does the potential retail, I would imagine this promenade becoming very popular, people walking towards the end and getting a coffee or hanging out there. So just wondering about the logistics of something like that.
Sure, Fadi.
Brian, you want to take the first pass on that?
Sure, of course. There's a couple different layers, I think, to that question. I think one is a question of time. I think we all understand that today the promenade, even if improved as part of this project, will remain fairly disconnected to other components and other anchors of activation. And so this is really, I guess, in terms being a destination promenade, that really the users of that might be the daily users of the studio. Our hope is that it becomes a great backdrop to film activities, potentially spilling out there, but largely not connected to the overall promenade, waterfront promenade system of Toronto more broadly. And so at least for the near term and interim term, the activation there and level of activity might remain relatively low. And I know I'm looking through a crystal ball here, but the anticipation ultimately, and the conversation has always been, is particularly at the main gate, at the terminus of Logan and the waterfront edge, is that there would be room there for an activation, be it retail, be it commissary, be it coffee, be it a studio, museum, store, something of that, but an engaging item that would help activate that corner. And as James showed in one diagram, on a softer side, maybe not a permanent, daily activation, but also looking at that potentially being an event space where we could have screenings, where we could have movies at night, we could have different events and engagements. And so you can see here a little bit of the dynamism of what that space is trying to provide. And really that gate on the water's edge is recessed into the studio, so that there's a moment where, what we try and do in all of our studios is given that they need to be secure and they need to maintain privacy, still trying to find peekaboo moments for public users to engage with the studio in a way they could walk up to the gate, kind of peek into the studio and see a moment of the bustling activity that's going within, but not necessarily piercing that secure perimeter. So our goal here is to have the edges, particularly at these moments, evolve over time as activation picks up, and balance that with the security and privacy needs. And then more broadly on the perimeter, as James described earlier, a lot of the space, that 10-meter space, is really dedicated to supporting the productions that are happening in the stages. And so the lower level there, the immediately lower level, is a typically more industrial space where we're doing rolling in and out sets. We have storage areas. There might even be, light construction activities, because those are at the same plane as the stages. We're wheeling props and sets and wardrobe in and out and back and forth. And then the second level of that 10 meters would be more of the production office, wardrobe, green rooms, writer rooms, typical kind of standard office as it relates to production. So that armature around each one of those stages is really there to support the production activities that are happening in the stages behind it. And so that's where you see the balance here, is James is kind of walking through the prototype of different edge conditions. As the use behind that facade changes, so does the edge condition. And again, just trying to find that right balance between activation and functional use.
Okay, next, Kevin.
Thank you. I realize there's a lot of preliminary work going on, but in my experience, very high performance sustainable projects are more successful when there's an integrated sort of fundamental strategy. I guess what I'm wondering is, have you guys thought about how you might be achieving some of the green building requirement energy targets, say vis-a-vis district energy systems, or are we thinking about standalone plants? Is there any thinking or any strategy that you guys are sort of exploring?
It's a great question, and there's a number of those that are very much in progress with the consultant team, and you're also absolutely correct that those need to be baked into the project from the beginning. So just a couple of high-level points. The project does have a central plant rather than having distributed mechanical systems that are associated with individual portions of the project. That does increase the energy efficiency overall of each of those systems, and that is a place that we can think about. Whether there are opportunities for integration with other city facilities or district energy in the future. There is not access to those facilities when this will be coming online initially, but that might be something that we could think about transitions later on. a couple of add points to the general sustainability strategies that are used across the project site. We're looking to use local materials wherever possible, including masonry. We're looking to balance window wall ratios so that we can have high performing enclosures. We have a full utilization of roof areas for both green, biodiverse, intensive roofs, as well as rooftop solar for on-site power generation across the project. We are also looking into additional strategies for low carbon materials, for example, mass timber for the 2 executive production offices, which you saw here. So this component of the project here, as well as the other that looks somewhat similar, but is a lower bar in the other component of the project. And the reason why we're targeting those here rather than other portions of the project is really code-based and related to fire separation based on construction type. For the lower components of the project, which we do need to be type 1A in order to allow for maximum connectivity between the stages and the production support areas. However, in those areas where we can transition to smaller floor plates, we're looking to use mass timber in those areas. So those are just a few high level elements that I think are part of the sustainability strategy of the project to date.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, I think we've completed the round of questions, so we'll move to comments.
I have one more question.
Oh,
Just a very quick one. Is this like there was in the kind of desire question at the beginning, there was a piece on the indigenous consultation about integration around the shipping channels, some of the frontier. So just want to hear, you haven't indicated where you are, where you're at with your consultation, and what are you intending to do in terms of that engagement?
Sure, and I'm happy to describe our process where we're at today, or where we're at to date. We've sent out an RFP to a handful of local parties and groups that could help us with this component. And so we're currently going through the interview process, the proposal process to try and bring on a partner, if not partners, to help this component of it. So as we were talking about the waterfront edge being an indicative component right now, the indigenous component of the project is indicative, but we're undergoing that process right now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks. So let's move to comments and we'll go through the list again. Pat, you want to start again?
Sure. Yeah, I really admire this proposal. It's really thoughtful. I'd like to see something like this get constructed for sure. You did mention that you don't have any landscape architects working on the project yet. That's a little bit obvious. And I would expect to see that there would be much more consideration along the promenade where the trees would be planted. There's some really great precedents in Toronto for that. That would be East Basin side, where's the great alley of trees? Yeah.
Well, Queen's Quay, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or the Water's Edge Promenade in East Bay.
Water's Edge Promenade would be something I think that would be really worth looking at, where the trees actually are planted in such a way they kind of affect the microclimate of being along the water's edge, because in Toronto, it can be pretty nasty here many times of the months of the year. So it's something to really consider. I'm appreciative of the fact that there's no vegetation on the inner streets and that they're smooth and straight. And I think they're probably great spaces, and all of the kind of complexity of vehicular movement. I understand the sort of requirements about that. But if there is somewhere else on site where you could consider groves of trees being planted, that there seems to be a kind of, it's lacking somewhat, notwithstanding the amenitized roofs. I'm going to use that word in the future. It's a pretty good word. And then lastly, this is such a minor comment, but there's something about your base building. Certainly the shaping of the studios, the parking structure, the office building are all really engaging, have really engaging architectural identities. There's something very average about the base building. I appreciate that it is there to sort of urbanize the perimeter, but it has a kind of commercial, not suburban's not quite the right word, but I just think that there's an opportunity there to perhaps rethink that sort of lower facade of that building in tandem when the landscape starts to get developed, that could bring a bit more richness to the overall proposal. Thank you, though.
Okay, thanks, Pat. Jenna?
Yeah, thanks. And I want to, I agree with Pat's comments. I think this is really going to be an exciting addition to the waterfront. And I want to pick up where Pat left off about the perimeter. And, you know, it seems to me that a film studio inherently is the world inside, and then there's the world outside, and what mediates it are the gates and the perimeter walls. And I feel like there's a missing opportunity here with the sameness of the gates. It seems to me the gates are one of the primary architectural and urban design moments that could either be conceived of as something where it's a point of similarity between all the gates, or it's a point of differentiation, or it's a point of change in scale because you have massive trucks and you have single cars going through. And so they don't all have to be the same. They don't all have to look at the same. And sort of developing the partie of that perimeter from that perspective, I actually think will land you much more firmly in this site than it is currently. And with that, I think the sameness of the perimeter wall, it's lacking the richness of the perimeter walls of the precedents that you showed earlier, where they were accretive, and over time one became a office building beside it and one became something else. You know, I think your perimeter is the same north, south, east, west, essentially. And I think, again, that's a missed opportunity. The perimeter wall along the lake is going to be really brutal. Like that whole environment in winter can be really brutal. Probably calls for a really different kind of response. The perimeter on the north side is going to be, hopefully over time, whether it's a backdrop for film shoots or where more and more people will come and walk along there, it offers another opportunity. So I think it's really important that you start again to land yourself in Toronto environmentally, and also where over time people are going to want to congregate, and in what ways to actually put a little more meat on the bone of that first 10 meters. And then finally with that, I think you're working against lending a more kind of satisfying depiction of the entire project, I think, by landing on the greens. To me, that green is redolent of 1930s and 40s Toronto park benches. It's not a color that, excuse me, works well in winter at all. It gets very dull. And it's also not a color that you would associate with the Portlands. The colors of the Portlands are really rich rusts, masonries, red washed old barn board wood structures. And it seems to me in the volumes you're quoting, an archetypal shed, an archetypal commercial box, and then a kind of contemporary office building. And so, and I think that's great. But I think with that, if you started to re-examine the color palette and the material palette, you might actually add a layer of richness that connects you to the precinct.
Okay, thank you. Eric?
Thank you. Just to, yeah, thank you for a great presentation, great material, great start. I think there is, I concur with my colleagues so far on all the comments. I think that's too on the idea of the materiality and how the top and the base are currently not, they don't really work quite, they don't work yet. Something to think about is you've used a lot of, and I think you're still in development, but the beige kind of brick, to me, it's something that is it doesn't talk about the Portland. I think it's a bit generic. I think, as Jana mentioned, there's a rich palette of industrial materiality in the Portland that actually is something that would be worth to continue to explore. I really like those kind of top volume and how the top actually reads. I think kind of making sure that things gets grounded on the, and how it carries to the ground or how it reads, I think is something that is would be critical. I was very intrigued by that. You know, I think as mentioned by Pat, continue to develop that water edge from a landscape perspective. How's the furniture? I'm very intrigued with this picture in terms of, are they moment where maybe you can get to the water? Those I think are things that are worth continuing to push for and explore. In terms of the gates, there's a few interesting elements that are there. I think that on the Carla gate, if you go back to one of the diagram you had earlier, there is an interesting opportunity where there is a maybe you go to the plan view. I'm trying to. It's on 33. Yeah, right there. So on the Carla gate at the north, on the northeast corner there, I really much see an opportunity of integrating the basin edge, the public realm. It almost like, you know, it kind of creates a bit of a space there of a little pops, a park or something. So I think that the way the public realm is integrated there, that kind of like you blurring the line between what's in the studio, what is at the Basin edge, I think creates something that's that might actually be quite interesting and unique. So talks about the differentiation between all the gates. I think that the sun oil gate, I think you call it, which is I think would be interesting in just you know, in the exploration of that building and to see how does the gate, the treatment of the architecture, the integration of the whole thing then start to read at something very special to understand how the building and everything gets integrated. Because I suspect this is in the absence of the I can't really read here, but the west gate, that gate's not going to exist probably for a long time. That one will be quite predominant. Another element that I think is worth to think about is there's a whole question about what edges are to be prioritized here. And looking at you know, I'm a little bit concerned about the treatment where you have the studio 9, 10, 11, 12, especially at that southeast corner, that I was almost thinking, wouldn't the offices that you currently see on Basin Street, you know, can some of the program be shifted more to activate that corner so you can actually have the channel being a bit more activated, so at least that it's booked in, that there is actually some activities there. It feels like there's not much happening at that corner, and I think that
is there is there an opportunity to respond and just kind of share some of the background on this, or should we just continue on with commentary?
Let's just continue with the commentary. We'll give you a chance to respond after.
Yeah, and this is
Okay,
again,
fair enough.
and I think some of our comments here is really about, you know, because this is issue identification. And I think it's more like, are there ideas like, you know, how can we I think the key comment here is how can you maybe better activate that southeast corner and the channel edge in general. And then I think that the one thing too, as you then as the next stage, it would be also great to see Basin Street, just in our understanding the streetscape character, the kind of how the building responds to the ground, how it's the kind of its treatment, and how it connects to the rest of the city grid. That would be something that I would be interested in seeing in your next stage of development. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'll go to our online guests just for a bit here. So Gina?
Hey, thank you all so much. That was really lovely, and I am excited for the project. And I appreciate that you don't yet have your landscape team on board, but have a lot of faith in Milk and can imagine that they're going to do some really incredible things here. And I guess the one contribution I could make to the dialogue, which I've agreed with from other panelists, is the building type's really hard, the program type, because you wind up having monotony, and you have this also have this really long and thin blocks pattern that you're working with. And so I think that the promenade has a real host of opportunities to really a lot of the variation you're trying to introduce are these little peekaboo moments, as you described, where the building sets back and you have these little moments of program. But I think the promenade could do some of that as well, and that it could become a really dynamic and changing place to break up some of that monotony and offer different kinds of experience. So I would really encourage, I know this is issues opportunity, but just a real thoughtful process around scale and opportunity to engage the water and topography, and how that can start to, and planting, and how all of those elements can start to bring together some more diversity of experience along the water. It just feels like a really long, hard slog otherwise with very little payback. So those are the comments that I could offer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Emily?
Thank you for such a great presentation, and I'm so excited about this being in the Portland's area as well. Gina, I totally underscore what you just said about breaking down the scale and introducing some kind of diversity within the experiential quality of the promenade. I want to take a step back because this is issues identification. I really appreciate this kind of tension that was discussed about the public realm and the public and this program type. I'd like to also introduce another kind of tension that needs to be considered as well, and that's the tension of ecology. I really appreciate that you showed the kind of deep ecology, deep history of the site, that this was the marsh. And the fact that this is on the Atlantic Flyway, this specific site, all of Portland's is, I think it's really important to think about how you can bring that into the landscape approach. And so when Milk comes on board, I would hope that they start to embrace that as well and think about how that could start to differentiate the kind of landscape that's proposed here as well. In terms of that, I'm wondering if you should be considering, instead of intensive roofscapes and green roofs, thinking more extensive and extending the canopy into the development as much as you possibly can. And I understand that there's a real tension with the kind of workings of the ground plane within the lots, but if there's a way to introduce canopy on that that upper level, where you're going to have more of the kind of interior public realm happening within the development, I think that that's really critical to be thinking about that. It also would start to create more comfortable spaces up there as well. As it's been said, this area of the waterfront can get very harsh with wind. So I would also encourage you to do some wind studies to really understand what the effect of this is going to be, and how to start to create spaces that would give comfort, especially since there is this design vision to be able to have this be accessible, occupiable year round, and have it so that, yeah, you can bring in activities, but if the area isn't comfortable, it's just not going to work. So I would encourage you to do those kinds of studies to make sure that you're understanding that aspect. I also would think about how you could use water and have that be part of the narrative. I really appreciate that the way that it was starting to be talked about, but I think that that's another aspect to be looked at, and I'm sure that there are others on the panel who can who will talk about that too. And then my last comment is thinking about how you could bring the canopy of the public realm into the ground plane at the moments that you actually can. So like at the gates, at Logan, I feel like there must be some way that you can kind of infiltrate in and extend it so that it becomes more of a connected, larger canopy and landscape. And those are my comments.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Nina Marie?
Thank you. Thank you for a sophisticated and thoughtful presentation that shows a lot of promise and I think excitement as well as respect for an exciting site. There's also real green infrastructure leadership here that I'm hearing about, and I feel the promise. I'm going to amplify and highlight some of my colleagues' comments, particularly the foregoing two that we just heard. Try not to repeat directly, but add on. And for this, I think you really do need a very well integrated and sophisticated landscape architectural as well as ecological design approach. That's really essential and a huge opportunity to meet what we were asked as the DRP to comment on around the city's goals. So you can really, I'd encourage you to develop this as an integrated strategy that's really focused on climate and biodiversity resilience. So performance is another way of saying this, as much as the campus plan and architecture. And I certainly hear the constraints, and we understand this building type or this master plan type is being considerably constrained. So that's not to say there isn't great promise here, but just to try to think of ways that we can help you to amplify the opportunities here. I think in particular, I just want to emphasize that you've noted that you're going to bring on an Indigenous consultant, which for placekeeping to be differentiated from placemaking is really important. And that's, I think the promise there lies in water, touching the water, the meaning of water, real opportunities for the campus as well as for the public promenade that we've talked about. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that. It also allows you to really amplify and stack some of the benefits here around the parcel of this site. So in addition to the benefits that are obvious of like reducing the urban heat island effect, supporting biodiversity on site, the relationship to the other parks, there's also the opportunity to capitalize on human health and wellness. We talk a lot about this coming out of COVID, obviously, and for a site of this import and opportunity, I think that's a real selling feature of your integrated plan is to really look at opportunities to benefit your population, the population that ebbs and flows in addition to the public wrapping around this site, so to say. So any opportunity to integrate and stack those functions, I think, is always a benefit. It's really important, this public promise, I think, around the promenade, despite its difficulties. I know comments were made earlier and I really highlight those to breaking up the space, yes, but I think ecologically, with an ecological design focus, you can do this. Some of the strategies were already mentioned. I would emphasize the stratification of the canopy, the diversity of tree planting and vegetation, not only to play host to the important biodiversity of the area, given the decline that we're facing, but the unique location within this waterfront site. That also, again, allows you to tie back to the opportunities around placekeeping as much as making places for newcomers. And because you have this changing population, I was really interested to hear about the ebb and the flow, maybe a little bit like Stadia. We know how challenging that is from a landscape perspective, where you get this torrent of people and then no one for a while. There really is opportunities to create these rooms or the peekaboo moments you've talked about, but with a very sophisticated green infrastructural strategy that you're already alluding to, I think allows these performance zones to really be highlighted. The connection to ecologically measurable performance, but also again to wellness. And the role of water here, I think, is really an opportunity that I'm just going to close on to say that I love the idea of a blue roof, but I think extensive opportunities are really critical. And anything we can do to touch the water. We know the partners, we know there's a lot of sophistication around the partners on the Portlands and the waterfront, also challenges, but there's, I think that's a huge moment for this project. And thank you again for a very sophisticated and thoughtful beginning to a great dialogue.
Okay, thanks, Nina Marie. Fatty?
Hi, thank you so much. I just want to echo everybody saying thank you so much for such a super clear and strong presentation. Overall, I think it's a really compelling project, and I would say it's one of the best studio-related projects we've seen on the DRP so far, especially at Issues ID. So I just want to really thank you for that. I'm also really kind of overall appreciative of the massing and the kind of formal articulation of the kind of individual structures. It seems it just feels right for such a complex program overall. And I think your pulse is on something that's going to be really great as it continues to evolve. So I just want to say that up front that there's some really great work starting on here. I really like the idea of a kind of multi-tier roof system. I really appreciate that you're thinking about that the combination of solar energy production and biodiversity and water mitigation and all of the above, these are things that might seem superfluous to the program and functions of a studio, all of a sudden become front and center. And I think that is something that is really commendable. I think this idea of kind of these adaptable doors along the perimeter that create an overall flexibility is also really exciting. It's going to be unique. We don't have many precedents to point to look at within our public realm. So I think you have a exciting design challenge on your hands that I'm looking forward to learn more about. I just want to mention one thing about this promenade. I know people have been talking about the cold in the winter, but I think this area is actually becoming way more active than you would expect. The little green strip on the north side of the shipping channel is pretty busy a lot of times in the summer. And as that beach that is being constructed on the other end of the ship terminal is completed, this area has become such an incredible pathway entrance to the Leslie Street Spit. So you're just going to start seeing lots of cyclists coming by. It is busier than you would think. So all I'm going to say is that as soon as you build this promenade, you might think it's going to be uninhabitable for a long time, or it might be an attraction that you're going to kind of purposely go for. I would just say that if it's there, people are going to come sooner than you expect, especially if it is beautiful. So I just want to, underscore and reiterate the value and the importance of this kind of continuous public realm that you're creating here, and it's a real gift to the city. And the juxtaposition of an active ship channel with a public realm is really exciting for people. You can just go look at Sugar Beach when the ship comes to offload sugar at the Redpath factory. It is a spectacle and people love it. So even though they might seem like non-competing uses, their juxtaposition and on a functioning harbor is actually something really fantastic for people to be a part of. So all of this to say is lots of exciting things to come from this project. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Piley. While we're there, let's see, Jeff, are you still there? Oh, Jeff?
Yeah. Hey, Paul.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, lots of good stuff. I think you've heard, a lot of comments. I think the sustainability stuff, I think, is really, it's encouraging to hear what you're considering. Talk a bit about energy and carbon. You're looking at mass timber, which is great, embodied carbon. Be interested in, some of the other materials. Obviously, it's going to be concrete, it's going to be steel. What you might be able to do to reduce embodied carbon there. The other thing is I would expect that a lot of your energy use is going to be around space heating in the studios. So, some other simple solutions I'd look at, some thermal solar energy options for ventilation, makeup air, something like a solar wall, particularly on this sort of industrial metal clad typology. It would basically look however you want it to look. Get really high returns. So that's something I would look at as kind of a really simple renewable energy strategy there. The PV is great. I think a little bit more detail about maybe some of the transportation, what you might be doing around electrification of vehicles. I know there's going to be a lot of sort of production loads, and there's work being done on the film side about sustainability there as well. That's sort of outside the scope of this project, but just considering how are you helping with the production side meet some of their goals as well? Whether it's lighting, whether it's waste, food. There's a ton of it is industrial, so there's a ton of waste that's going to be generated through here. So I'd be really interested to see some innovative strategies and how that's being factored into the site plan and design and the buildings as well. Otherwise, I think it's a really exciting project, and I applaud your ambition on this.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. I think I've got everyone off online, so I've got David and Kevin. So Kevin, do you want to follow up with Jeff first, or we'll end with David?
Okay.
Thank you. I do want to commend the project team. I think it's an exciting project. I think there's some great opportunities also to exhibit leadership. I think you already are, but I just want to tie into my question about an integrated strategy. Everybody talks about how projects have to be integrated and they're going to be integrated and so on and so forth. But if I want to highlight that the Waterfront Toronto green building requirements are the compliance requirements for the site, which supersede or exceed the requirements for the Toronto Green Standard. So I'm hoping that the design team is aware of that. One thing that the green building requirements for Waterfront Toronto stress are greenhouse gas emissions. They're stringent. They cap out at 5 kilos per square meter of equivalent CO2. That is a very stringent requirement. I'm very happy about that personally. I think it's achievable with creativity, innovation, resourcefulness. But again, it has to be sort of thought about at the inception of the project. So this being issues identification, I want to encourage you and emphasize that that requirement will be the requirement that this site is evaluated upon. And within that standard, given that this is an unusual typology, a difficult typology, there are flexible compliance paths, but they have to start with a conversation with Waterfront Toronto. We have to sort of lay out a strategy. It has to be agreed upon. Ultimately, there could be flexibility on the thermal demand. There could be flexibility on the total energy use intensity, but there's probably not going to be flexibility on the greenhouse gas intensity. So I just want to indicate that, and that conversation can start immediately, and it's probably to the benefit of the project. Thanks.
Thank you. And David.
Great, thanks, and again, thanks for that great presentation, and certainly a very strong start to this project at this stage. I do want to just channel Matthew Hickey, who's not here today, but I know that he would probably speak to the fact that this part of the lake has a 10,000 year or so history post glaciation, with Indigenous peoples obviously occupying these lands since then, and we are out in the lake, literally in the lake. And I think that tension that Emily talked about in terms of the ecological layer here, the migratory bird route, are all really critical, and obviously harnessing water, harnessing stormwater, are all really critical components to that storyline, and as well, obviously, the Indigenous component that you're just beginning to look at here. And I think to underscore that, how critical it is as well, just from a human habitation perspective, is that when you look at this image here, which I think is quite interesting, the natural shoreline is, thousands of meters back, a couple of thousand meters, I think, back in this view. And so you really are out in the lake, and that's part of the reason why the climate is so harsh here, is that it really is the full force, of those lake edge conditions that all of us have experienced. So it's not only about the ecology, but it's also about the human comfort that others have spoken to. And I think finally, I would also encourage you to look very carefully at those view corridors that I talked about earlier, the view down Carlaw, and how that can be opened up as much as possible, even potentially pulling back that eastern edge to ensure that there's strong and clear views to the shipping channel, and similarly at Logan to really open that up as much as you can, because those are the connections back to the city.
Okay, thank you. I think that covers everyone in the panel, so I'll do my best to summarize the major themes, then we'll give you a chance to respond, and you take it from there. I think you've heard a lot of very positive comments, great work, a great start, and many suggestions that I hope were helpful to you. And I want to start off by making one observation, and I think it was Fatty who made this comment about, you'd be surprised how many people already go down there, especially on their bicycles, obviously, but also just walking, and believe it or not, along the edge of the turning basin, just where the Carlaw corner is there. That green space is quite popular. And I was there recently when the lift bridge opened up on Cherry Street and a huge ship came in from Hamilton. And it was a great experience. And that ship channel is a working channel. The ships go back and forth to the end of that channel to the concrete campus, as it's called. So it's only going to continue to be a very fascinating place for people to go to. And one of the things that I think is important about Torontonians is we love to discover new places, and we'll explore anywhere. And I think you're going to find, as soon as the word's out that this is in the works and this is going to get developed, you're going to see people come down there, probably at levels you never expected. And that I mention that because that reinforces all the comments you've heard, especially about the promenade, about the activation, how to break up the long scale of the building, the potential for events, as you said, peekaboo opportunities into the studios, diversity of tree planting, those things and many, many more. So all these things are really critical to pay close attention to. Another major theme was obviously the need yet to bring on the landscape architects and develop a full landscape strategy, and to integrate that strategy with the base building. So to rethink this along with that landscape strategy as one integrated overall exercise. In terms of other themes in no particular order, I think various people said there's maybe a missing opportunity about the design of the gates. They don't have to all look the same or be the same scale. There's opportunity for identity, for distinction there in terms of, the main front entrance perhaps on Basin Street is treated differently than it is, on the waterfront promenade and also in Carlaw. Another comment made about an exploration perhaps of the colors, other than the green. I don't personally mind the green, but I think it is not representative of the Portland. So the palette and the colors, the palette of materials and the colors, I think is a useful exploration to take a good look at and bring back when we see it next. In terms of the view corridors, that's pretty obvious. That is fundamental for us to preserve the north-south view corridors, not only in the initial stages, but over the long term as the area evolves and develops, as well as the east-west access. The little bit of commentary about the Carlaw Gate being somewhat unique because of its access to the water. And at that very edge, I think it could be perhaps treated a little differently so that there's an opportunity for special placemaking right inside the Carlaw Gate at that edge of the promenade as it intersects with the turning basin. The potential to activate that whole southeast corner has been mentioned several times. I think we also would like to see an elevation of Basin Street to see what that whole elevation looks like the next time you come back. Various comments made about the potential to introduce canopies at the upper level, be mindful of the climatic situation there. We do have 4 distinct seasons, and it can be a pretty brutal place in the winter. And I want you to think about people just wouldn't come there in the summer. I think, all seasons should be thought about in terms of that strategy and that opportunity. So the level of comfort is critical that has to be achieved in the plan. And I guess a final theme about the importance of the Indigenous strategy that David just ended on, the 10,000-year history, the nature of this place going way, way back in terms of human occupation, telling that story, the experience of being on the water, the opportunity to touch the water, to get close to the water. Themes of placekeeping and placemaking are obvious here. So I think there's so much potential. It's a great challenge for you, a great assignment ahead, and we look forward to seeing that come back. So I hope that captures most of the themes, and now's an opportunity for you to respond.
No, and I appreciate everybody's time here today and the thoughtful comments and the review. And, you know, I would say the general enthusiasm of everybody around the room in person there and also on this call is great to hear. We are incredibly invested in this. We think we have an amazing project, not only going to help the jobs and economy of Toronto and establish even further the production basis within the city, but also bring a great urban design product to the promenade, waterfront, to the future build out of the Portlands. And so it's trying to meet so many goals in so many ways and balance so many challenges and finding that appropriate juxtaposition of program to activation, security to porosity. So clearly there's a lot of balance that needs to go in here, but appreciate the comments from everybody. These are all things for us to dig into. As was stated, we're really excited to have Milk on board here and dive in. I think that will add a deeper level of understanding and thought to the project and respond to many of these comments, and appreciate everybody's time and support here today.
Okay, thank you very much. Good luck.
Thanks a lot. I want to echo those comments that Brian made. I really appreciate the timeliness of these as well as we're getting into the development of the design. So having all of your perspective is very valuable for the design team to help us kind of focus and bring some of these issues to the forefront of the design as it develops. So thanks a lot for the time and consideration.
Okay, thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Have a
Appreciate
good
it.
day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. I guess.
Times. I think we should let everybody go.
15 minutes over, yeah. So that ends our agenda items. Is there anything you want to say, Chris,
No,
before
I
we
don't think
formally
so.
adjourn?
No, I think it was a good day.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for sticking around.
Yeah, yeah. We lost a few casualties.
Yeah, we had a couple, but you know.
I know. Okay. Well, then thanks again. So I guess we are formally adjourned
We're
until
adjourned.
July.
Until July. See
Yeah.
you guys then. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.